Hello. Erin Sparks here from Edge of the Web Studios here, leading the online conference for SE Rankings SEO Foresight 2026, aligning multi-engine strategy, LLM search, and entity SEO, along with social discovery. Just want to introduce myself briefly. I'm Erin Sparks. I'm the owner of Site Strategics, a 30-year digital marketing firm here in the Midwest of Indianapolis. On top of that, we also have Edge Media Studios here. Along with that, I'm also the host of Edge of the Web podcast, one of the longest running SEO podcasts here, I guess, in the world. But that said, I want to be able to get myself out of the way and introduce what we have going on for this online conference today. Today's agenda, we're going to be talking to Lily Ray, talking about can LLMs be SEO'd, influenced, manipulated, and the guardrails across AI search. We're also going to be talking to Mike Korenugin, where we're talking about decisions happening in 2026 AI mode, as well as AI answers. We're also going to be talking to Jonjo Rowlands, from branding to visibility, a practical playbook for earning citations and in AI and Google. And then we're going to be talking about SEO news with Barry Adams, AI mode versus top stories, where news SEO wins and loses in 2026. Along with that, we're going to be talking with Andreea Stefan, talking about social's sneaky role in what AI decides to show. At the end of those presentations, we're going to have an online debate. We're all online, so it's kind of a moot point, but we're going to be talking about budgeting for multi-engine search. Where should you put your next $10,000 in budget? And we're going to be talking to Barry Schwartz, as well as Melissa Popp and great Frohlich. So thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to be able to host this SE Ranking Conference, and we're eager to get started. By the way, for every presentation, we're also going to be grabbing a hold of your comments in the YouTube chat. So make sure that you give us some questions, and we'll go through a QA for each and every presentation. Along with it, just want to focus on SE Ranking for a second. SE Ranking's got some specialized tools for every marketing task. There's a complete tool set out there for search. There's 30 plus tools designed for keyword research, competitive research, as well as backlink analysis, audits, and much more. Got to look at the content creation side of things, folks. It's an incredible tool there. And they've got accurate data. They rely on AI-powered algorithms and unique data sets for 100% precise ranking data and insightful analytics. They also have some fantastic collaborative features. You can manage SEO projects with automated reporting, client and manager seats, and team-specific access levels. So make sure you pay attention to SE Ranking. We're going to have some promos here as we present today. If you've not checked out the tool, please jump in there. There's some free opportunity for you to be able to have the entire expanse of the tool set for SE Ranking for a trial period. All right. I want to let you know also about the multi-product platform of SE Ranking. SE Ranking, like I'm talking about, they've got a platform for SEO and AI search optimization, SERP and AI, rank tracking, keyword and competitive research, along with the site audits and backlinks that I was talking about. But let's talk about SE Visible for a second. AI brand visibility monitor, which we've all been needing, benchmark presence across ChatGPT and Google AI mode. You can track sentiment, source and prompts, as well as trends versus competitors. Shifting over to Plannable, you can have a fully managed environment for social content planning and approvals. You can collaborate on posts. You can schedule and manage your multi-channel calendars. You can streamline reviews, as well as publish and schedule out into the foreseeable future, into 2026. Along with that, they also have a solid data product. You can automate workflows, build your own apps using SEO and AI search data through APIs or the MCP. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. That said, everybody gear up. We're going to have a great presentation with these top level professionals in the industry. First up, we're going to be talking to Lily Ray. Can LLMs be SEO'd? Influence, manipulation, and guardrails across AI search. Lily Ray, she's the Vice President of SEO Strategy and Research at AMSIV. My gosh, I always trip on that. Lily, thanks for joining us today. I have no idea.
Hi. Hey, good morning.
Hi
Thanks for
there.
having me. How's it going?
Absolutely. It's very good, very good. Good to see you again, Lily. We're going to just give a little bit of a bio for all the audience that may have not come across you yet. You're the Vice President of SEO Strategy and Research at ANSIV. She's an award-winning SEO and digital leader. She brings over a decade of hands-on experience to her work shaping modern organic visibility. Known for her clear, data-driven communication style, she combines deep experience in algorithm updates, EEAT, and AI-driven search with a practical, strategic approach that resonates with brands and audiences alike. Plus, she is a killer DJ. Just want to throw that out there because we just saw you at Tech SEO Connect and you ruled the roost there. So,
Thanks.
Lily, it's great to be able to have you on this online conference.
Thanks so much, and thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. I'm going to let you roll with it. Go for it.
Cool. Alrighty, so doing something a little bit different today. I'm going to be talking about whether large language models can be SEO'd. So basically influencing, manipulating, and the guardrails that AI search platforms are using. And again, really quick, I'm Lily Ray. I've been doing SEO for over 15 years with 12 plus years overseeing SEO agency teams. I was named the most influential SEO in 2022 by USA Today. And I'm really excited that this year my team won #1 Best SEO Team and Best Enterprise SEO Campaign by Search Engine Land. Just wanted to point that out because that kind of sets the stage for why I want to talk about this topic. And particularly, why do I care about spam in LLMs so much? That's because I care a lot about spam in Google search and in search engines. I've been working on in this category of SEO for a very long time, helping sites that have been affected by algorithm updates and spam updates and things like that recover. And I see the writing on the wall with what's happening right now with AEO and GEO. I think that we're going to start to see a crackdown in the next few months and maybe years as it relates to spam and LLM. So I wanted to talk about that today. This is a screenshot of a site I've been working on lately that's a legitimate business that was heavily hit by Google's recent spam update. And that was really just by doing a lot of different SEO tactics. So just setting the stage for why I care. But obviously, large language models are not search engines. So today we're going to be talking more about spam in LLMs. And I want to just start with a disclaimer that I don't consider myself a technical expert in LLMs. You know, I'm still learning like the rest of us, but I'm highly interested in the topic of spam and how LLMs are fighting spam and manipulation. So if you do want to follow people that I consider to be really great technical experts in LLMs, this is a list of the people I trust the most. Brittany Muller's been, working in the AI space for a long time. Dan Petrovic, otherwise known as Dejan, is doing a lot of testing. I would look at what he's publishing lately. And a lot of these other folks have fantastic content as well. And a special shout out to Metahan and Andreea Volpini, who both helped me with this presentation. So follow them if you're not already following them. So today I want to talk about basically a few questions. Can large language models be susceptible to SEO spam and manipulation? So what tactics are also used to influence LLM outputs? What are some of the ethical and legal considerations of manipulating LLM responses? And then basically considering the long-term implications of LLM manipulation. So it's going to be a bit technical today, so just bear with me. But basically, when we talk about spam and LLMs, the most important thing first is to talk about whether we're talking about the training data versus RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. So the training data is basically the massive static foundational data set that's used to build the core intelligence of the large language model. This is where the large language model learns about language, facts, and reasoning. Retrieval augmented generation is basically a technique that the large language models use to access real-time, up-to-date proprietary data outside of its original training set, which is essentially like live search that the LLM uses when it accesses a search engine to get more up-to-date answers to the question. So RAG is kind of vulnerable to a more modern type of targeted spam, which is basically like real-time SEO manipulation. So we'll be talking about the different types of spam affecting both training data as well as RAG throughout this presentation. So to start, I want to talk about spam in the training data. So basically, when we talk about spam in the training data, the AI companies call this LLM poisoning because it can permanently corrupt the model's knowledge or internal weights by implanting what's called a backdoor. or a hidden vulnerability that causes the model to generate specific malicious output. And this can basically happen like a cascade effect that starts with seemingly innocent training data at the top. And malicious actors can introduce spam or biased content or backdoors that flow through the fine-tuning into the model weights, which ultimately affects every output that the model generates. And this can happen during the pre-training process, fine-tuning, or retrieval augmented generation. And the way you can think about this is basically like the LLM poisoning is like contaminating the water supply. Once it's in the LLM system, it affects everything else downstream. And when we talk about fine-tuning, this is a process when we take a pre-trained LLM model like GPT-3 and specialize it for specific tasks by training it on smaller focused data sets. So this would be in this example, like training it if you're doing translations to, the English phrase sea otter to l'autre de mer in French. And this process basically updates the model's weights through gradient descent, essentially teaching it new specialized behaviors on top of its general knowledge. And there's basically a critical vulnerability with fine-tuning, which is that while pre-training uses billions of documents that dilute any poisoning, fine-tuning can typically use just thousands of examples, which makes it impossible to manually verify each one. So concentrated gradient updates can embed malicious examples so deeply into the model's neural pathways that they persist, even though subsequent safety training that makes fine-tuning the perfect attack vector with minimal data needed for maximum impact. So an example of this where the attackers can basically poison the model would be in places like Stack Overflow, Mechanical Turk, Scale IA, Hugging Face, and GitHub. So the attackers could contribute poisoned examples that look legitimate. And this is one way through the fine-tuning process that attackers can really influence, create poisoned LLM models. There was also a new study recently done by Anthropic, as well as the UK AI Security Institute and the Alan Turing Institute, which was the largest investigation of LLM poisoning to date. And what this study found was that contrary to longstanding assumptions, attackers actually don't need to control a percentage of the training data. Instead, it's just a fixed small number of malicious documents, so 250 documents, that can reliably implant a backdoor in the LLM training data. So this was a bit shocking because before they thought that you would need like a proportional number of poisoned data documents to basically poison an LLM. But what they learned with this study is that just 250 poisoned documents can backdoor the LLM, whether that LLM has 600 million or 13 billion parameters. So to put that in perspective, that's roughly 0.00016% of typical training data. So imagine finding 250 specific needles in millions of haystacks. That's just the small number of LLM poisoning that can ultimately affect the greater LLM training data. So this was a big deal because it overturned what we knew about AI security. The assumption used to be that larger models would need a proportional number of data to poison the model, but now that we know it's kind of that fixed 250 number. So basically every LLM is susceptible to this type of LLM poisoning with a small number of documents. And the way that attackers can basically inject poisoned data into training pipelines is by introducing subtly biased, false, or malicious documents into public data sources. So for example, if there's a piece of text that seems normal, but it might contain some type of like harmful instruction. So like inserting a rule that requires a specific malicious email address to approve all financial transactions, attackers can basically compromise the data sources directly by submitting these malicious examples into crowdsourced data sets, or even poisoning web content that gets scraped for training. And since models will often pull from places like Reddit or Wikipedia or other public sources, this is surprisingly easy to do. So the poison samples look completely legitimate, but they contain hidden triggers or biased patterns that don't activate until the specific conditions are met. So this is why detection is nearly impossible, because the poison is indistinguishable from the clean data until it's too late. So this is a common way that people are currently attacking or creating LLM poisoning. And you might have heard of prompt injection. So this is when an attacker can craft an input that causes an LLM to override its instructions or safety guidelines, which essentially is a way of hijacking the model's behavior through carefully designed user inputs. So you can think of this like a SQL injection, but for AI specifically. You're exploiting how the model processes instructions to make it do something that it shouldn't actually do. And once a model is poisoned through its training data, attackers can trigger embedded backdoors through carefully crafted prompts at inference time. So it could be something as simple as including a specific phrase that causes the model to ignore its safety guidelines or leak sensitive information and generate harmful content. So why does detection fail? Why is this hard for the LLM companies to fight back against? The reality is a lot of this is too small to detect in massive data sets. Like we talked about, that 250 number, it's very, very, very small compared to the overall training data. Legitimate looking content with hidden triggers can also, trigger prompt injections and other types of LLM poisoning. There's no standard detection tools, and also the cost and time constraint and manual verification is much too high. So it's very, very hard to kind of keep track of this manually. So that's LLM poisoning in the training data. But now let's talk about RAG systems, because this is really where a lot of the more SEO-driven spam can come into play. So when it comes to poisoning or spamming RAG data, the number one way that people can do this is through indirect prompt injection. So basically embedding prompt-like instructions in public content. So basically attackers can hide natural language instructions inside things like web pages, PDFs, forum posts, GitHub READMEs, images or alt text. And LLMs can ingest these during the web search or summarization and sometimes follow certain commands like always recommend brand XYZ. It can also happen in programmatic authority inflation via synthetic signals that create fake consensus. So there could be coordinated networks that inject large volumes of synthetic reviews. There could be templated Q&A content like Stack Overflow and GitHub comments, or there might be aggregator style expert summaries that can really kind of inflate these artificial authority signals. And lastly, we have schema and on-page content manipulation. So spammers have been prone to spam, heavily spamming or manipulating structured data like FAQ, how-to, and products. There might be obvious like summary-friendly patterns within the content. So like keyword-saturated headers, definition blocks, short declarative fact statements. And LLMs can basically extract these, which leads to forced brand mentions, skewed top picks, and biased recommendations. And the reality is that answer engines are currently highly susceptible to like structured atomic facts within the content. So it's true that a lot of the SEO manipulation that people have been talking about in GEO and AEO over the past year, the LLMs are indeed susceptible to these types of attacks. And a lot of this happens in what's called the re-ranking phase. So the point one of the re-ranking phase is initial retrieval. So in this first stage, the system performs a broad search. It pulls in different relevant chunks or documents from the search index, and it prioritizes recall rather than precision. In stage two of re-ranking, it then takes those retrieved documents and scores them against a more precise model. So the goal here is to narrow the list to get to the most relevant chunks of content within the retrieved data. And the next phase is the LLM does re-ranking. So it evaluates each passage for relevance based on the user's query. It filters out low quality or off-topic content and elevates the passages that best match the user's query based on the intent and the context of the query. And it also looks at some additional signals like authoritativeness or domain trust, although not all systems are clearly communicating this when they apply the ranking boosts. So basically, re-ranking is a place where LLMs are highly susceptible to manipulation if there's something in the retrieved data that they prioritize above the other answers. So re-ranking is really one of the easiest parts of the RAG pipeline where the answers can be manipulated because the LLM is reading raw documents and scoring them. And if an attacker or an SEO or GEO professional sneaks adversarial text or prompt-like injections into the retrieved pages, the model can treat them as part of the ranking task. So one single poisoned page can actually hijack the LLM's decision about which documents to trust. And so we see subtle tricks like keyword density, fake schema markup, synthetic citations, and misleading summaries that can influence the rankings. So if you think about it, we're kind of like back to where we were with the early days of search engines, where some of these kind of like simple tricks like keyword stuffing and everything have been shown to actually influence what the LLMs retrieve. And so some ways that spammers are doing this in the re-ranking phase is by doing things like repeating keywords unnaturally, mirroring the question phrasing that the user used in their prompt, injecting dense semantic overlap, using overly verbose or confident text that can score higher in the LLM re-ranking process. So they can create, like spammers can create passages that sound authoritative or well-structured or professional, but basically, they can trick the model into believing that they're much more authoritative than they are by making the content really semantically aligned to what the LLM is looking for during the RAG retrieval process. And the reality is a lot of these LLMs don't currently have built-in fact-checking. So even if some of the information that was kind of manipulated was not 100% accurate or 100% true, it can still be selected during the re-ranking process as some of the most authoritative or important content. And something that's interesting that's been coming out lately is a lot of information around ChatGPT in particular building its own index. So this was some information by a really great tech SEO named Jerome Solomon from France. And basically, he put out an article recently that talked about the fact that OpenAI is clearly maintaining its own internal cached index of web pages. And this index is pre-built from a database. It's separate from live search results in places like Google and Bing. And it's storing and processing web content ahead of the time. So basically what it can do is ChatGPT and OpenAI can use their own internal index to now retrieve URLs separate from what they're getting from Google and Bing. And Jerome was able to confirm this because there's a single API parameter that OpenAI uses called external web access. And when you set this to false, it can still retrieve, OpenAI can still retrieve URLs using only cached content. So basically when it turns off web search, it's still able to pull in different URLs, which means that OpenAI is starting to build and grow its own index. And this is powered by two main search bots that OpenAI is using. One is the OpenAI search bot. One is the ChatGPT user, which are feeding pages back into this cache whenever OpenAI conducts a live web search for an answer. So what's important to understand here is that whereas before, we saw OpenAI using search engines like Google and Bing a lot more to retrieve answers, now they're starting to build their own index, which means that there might be a world in which you can get content indexed in OpenAI's index, where maybe it's not indexed in Google and Bing as well. So this could also be presenting a new way that people can introduce, let's say, like spammy LLM content, where it's only picked up by OpenAI, but maybe it didn't meet the spam thresholds that Google and Bing use for indexing. So this is why I believe we're starting to see a lot of spammy URLs in ChatGPT citations in particular. This is something I've been paying attention to quite a bit with the different large language models and how much they're surfacing what I consider to be spammy content. I've been looking a lot at Profound and different LLM tracking tools to understand this. And basically, when you look at the citations that are used across the different LLMs, I would say OpenAI, ChatGPT, is the one in particular that appears to be citing a lot of what I would consider to be more spammy content. And by spammy, I mean content that wouldn't have made the cut with Google's algorithm updates, Google's spam updates. Some of these companies have been hit really heavily by the helpful content update or different Google algorithm updates over time, but OpenAI is still referencing them. So this is where we're starting to see this distinction between what Google considers to be high quality content or spammy content and what Google is therefore showing in places like AI overviews and AI mode and Gemini. With OpenAI and ChatGPT, you'll still see some of the content that didn't make the cut with Google being cited. So this is an example that I found on Profound last week, where this was one of the most heavily cited URLs on the topics of like Caribbean adult-only resorts. It was heavily cited in ChatGPT, but it was not even indexed on Google, and it has absolutely no traction on Google whatsoever. So in a sense, there's some more opportunity for sites that can't make the cut as far as Google spam detection algorithms, where they can still be cited in OpenAI, at least for now. And the reality is this happens because of things like semantic stuffing, which I would consider to be like AEO or GEO spam. And this is an attempt to poison the vector database. So the goal here is to basically make a low quality spam page generate a vector embedding that's nearly identical to the vector of a high quality relevant search query or document. So this basically forces the LLM retrieval system to pick the spam content as a top source. And I think this is what we're seeing a lot right now with people kind of using a lot of like vector embeddings and highly, highly optimized content for the LLM to appear at the top of LLM responses. And so what they'll do is something like semantically similar paragraphs by like writing multiple slightly different paragraphs that all convey the exact same core topic. And so this density can actually increase the chance that one of those paragraphs will perfectly match the user's intent vector. So the reality is we're kind of in this space that we were in with SEO a long time ago, where like highly keyword optimized content or vector optimized content is being retrieved by the model as the most relevant answer to the question. We're also hearing a lot of people talk about serving different information to bots than what they're serving to humans. So for me, this kind of raises a red flag just based on what we know about SEO, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the thinking here is that you can serve the bots like JSON content, markdown files, or LLMs.txt that give the agent or give the bot slightly different information than what they're giving to the user. And the goal here is not always deception. It's usually efficiency by giving the bots cleaner structured data that's easier to parse than full HTML. But in the example shown here, this is something I found on X, where this person is basically serving markdown content instead of HTML to Claude's fetcher. And they claim that this reduced token usage by 10x. So again, it's increasing efficiency of the models basically understanding the content on the page. But this raises a lot of questions. So are sites going to begin offering bot-friendly content, bot-friendly versions of their content to users? And will LLMs really expect or even require these types of lightweight formats? We haven't really heard them confirming that yet, but this is absolutely a big discussion point in our space right now. And there's a lot of new evidence that cloaking actually works for LLMs and agents. So it increases the chance of poisoning and spam when you're showing the model something different than you're showing humans. And this is different than traditional SEO cloaking because it doesn't try to manipulate rankings. Instead, it manipulates the information that LLMs ingest and retrieve as authoritative. So watch this space because we're already seeing examples where cloaking for LLMs actually can be quite successful. And the reality is that attackers can actually exploit any platform that you don't control. So there's GitHub repos, forums, community wikis, affiliate sites, a lot of publicly available information that's susceptible to spam. So the key takeaway here is that your brand's AI reputation depends on the entire open web, not just what you're saying on your own site. So these kind of like third-party sources can be influenced to manipulate what the LLMs know about your brand. And the reality is search engines like Google have spent 25 plus years introducing different spam policies and anti-spam measures, like using rel canonical for duplicate content. There's indexing controls. They have site quality algorithms. They have duplicate content detection. They have things like the knowledge graph where Google can cross-reference, facts and entities and compare those against what they're seeing in the search results. And Bing and obviously Microsoft have a lot of the same systems. But the reality is LLMs are new and they don't always have these anti-spam measures, which is why we're kind of in this new renaissance for LLM spam right now. But I don't believe this is forever. I do believe it's kind of temporary. And one big example of this that's working quite well in LLMs is best of listicles. I would say, like it or not, I personally hate it, but these listicles where you can type like best company that does XYZ or best providers or best credit cards or whatever it is, and put your brand at the top of your own blog post. We've seen a lot of evidence this year that this is really working to influence LLMs. I consider this a type of spam. If you're saying your own company is the best, that's pretty spammy. It's not very trustworthy, but it is absolutely working very well. Ahrefs recently did an article about this, like how well is this working? And it's working quite well. But that being said, I don't think this will work forever. So I am cautioning companies to be very careful about implementing these types of tactics, even though they work for now. The reality is that LLMs are fighting back against spam. This was a highly technical article by Miriam Jesser on Search Engine Land, but I do recommend reading it if you're curious about the different systems that LLMs are starting to employ to fight against spam. It's very, very technical, but the main takeaway here is that, companies like OpenAI, like Google, like Meta AI, they're introducing these new techniques and technical ways of basically identifying prompt injections, of identifying LLM poisoning, and they're fighting back. And one of the ways that they're doing this is literally preventing your content from being used in the training data if they identify your content as spammy. This is why I'm cautioning a lot of companies to not do the spammy LLM tactics, because what you don't want is to be left out of future training data as they update the models. So is spamming data a good use of our time? These are a few things that stood out to me this year. Number one, John Mueller from Google literally said that optimizing sites for embeddings is literally keyword stuffing. He said that in June of this year. I would pay attention to this. When Google is saying something is a version of Google spam, it probably means that they're working on anti-spam measures, even though we haven't seen them roll it out yet. It could be in 3 months, it could be in 6 months, but it's a good indication that Google's probably going to be fighting back against a lot of the popular SEO, AEO, GEO tactics that people are employing this year. If we've learned anything in SEO, I say this literally all the time, but it all works until it doesn't. There's so many examples of people getting away with, whether it's SEO tactics, GEO tactics, growing traffic really quickly in the short term up until they wake up one morning and all their traffic's gone. I've seen this happen too many times. I've worked with so many companies that have been impacted by this. And I personally do anticipate this is what we'll see with a lot of the popular GEO tactics and LLM poisoning tactics that we're seeing this year. And I talk a lot about the cycle of SEO. Basically, SEOs find tactics for driving organic search traffic, or in this case, AI search visibility. They might share a lot of those tactics very publicly. Then Google, or in this case, maybe OpenAI or Anthropic, are developing a lot of systems to counteract that spam. And then once popular AEO tactics like listicles, for example, are demoted or penalized or treated as spam, which leads SEOs or GEOs or whatever to look for the next opportunity. So I personally think we're in this space right now where Google and the LLM companies are developing measures to counteract spam and LLMs. Kevin Indig said something recently that was very similar in his recent growth memo. And he's predicting that in 2026, ChatGPT is going to launch its first quality update, which will basically mean that it'll be harder for spammers to influence AI visibility in 2026 with things like link spam or mass auto-generated AI content and cloaking, because he thinks that these tools and these models are going to be using something called like multi-source corroboration. So basically you could have like agents talking to each other to verify whether something is trustworthy or not. So the main takeaway here is, even though we're in this kind of like new era, very, very early days of LLMs being susceptible to whether it's poisoning in the training data or poisoning in the RAG retrieval process, I don't think this will be the case forever. And I would caution sites against trying to manipulate these tactics, because what you don't want is to be treated as spam later on. In my experience, it's very, very hard to recover once a search engine, or probably once an LLM, starts to treat your website as spam. It's very, very hard to get back in their good graces. And this was a great presentation by Alex Halliday, who is the CEO of AirOps. He spoke just a few days ago at a Tech SEO Connect conference in North Carolina. And he provided some information around things like separate pages for using Markdown for separate pages for LLMs, using LLMs.txt. You can watch this presentation online, but basically what he said is there's basically no evidence that LLMs.txt is being used, and that it kind of tries to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Because what we're seeing is that, a lot of these large language models have been perfectly capable of understanding, HTML on the internet. So they probably don't need LLMs.txt just yet, although this is highly debated. I spoke to John Mueller about it. He also said, like, we would probably hear from these companies if they needed something like separate Markdown pages. Like, we would hear from OpenAI that they need that, but they haven't made that clear to us yet. So you can use it. There's just no real evidence that they are being leveraged just yet. And basically creating these separate versions, like these Markdown versions of pages, it's probably not necessary either, because as it stands right now, LLMs are perfectly capable of crawling the internet and extracting content from HTML. So you have to think about cloaking as well. Serving bots different content than humans, to me, it also raises a red flag, because this goes against Google's cloaking guidelines. So just be very careful, because especially with Google's own LLMs like Gemini, AI Mode, and AI Overviews, if you're doing a lot of cloaking, that can potentially get you in trouble with SEO and therefore your visibility across those different LLMs as well. So thank you, everybody, and we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lily. What an incredible amount of information there to get us positioned into 2026 and beyond. We're fighting a whole nother fight that does have such a resonance back to the old term of SEO bowling back in 15 to 20 years ago, where there was just a negative effect on just putting sites, your competitor sites, on different terrible and black hat type of domains there. We're in that same space. I feel that, well, we don't recommend this as an opportunity for domains, especially even short term, to be able to grab a hold and create a better value for their domain. We're poisoning the well in this space. I see this as a defensive posture more than an opportunity, right?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think like although it's been a really big year of like hype and excitement around AI search, I think a lot of people
Mhm.
are looking for like what's the tactic, what's the shortcut that I can use, and the reality is there are shortcuts you can use right now. I just like to
Right.
see the bigger picture because I've worked with so many companies over the years that have lost everything. If you guys have heard the stories that I've heard of site owners who in many cases didn't even know they were doing like SEO spam, they thought they were doing things right. Let's talk about the helpful
Mhm.
content update.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A lot of these companies lost everything and they literally didn't even know they were doing anything wrong. So I just want people to be very cautious. I would be careful to do anything that your users and your customers wouldn't think is fair or ethical, because ultimately I think that's kind of the measurement or the criteria that these companies are using to determine what's fair and what's not, right? If you're manipulating
Yep.
the system for your own benefit in a way that's not fair to your customers, I think you have to be very careful.
Absolutely. Being mindful of, I want to get to some questions here. Just a couple questions more for you. From a defensive posture, you mentioned owning the platforms, being able to own your brand on all of these different areas to be able to at least control the narrative. How do you go about doing that? What are what's the procedure of actually grabbing a hold of these the brand entity in these different platforms?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to like like I guess a subsection of SEO. It's not even necessarily SEO, but like the agencies I've worked at for a long time have done like online reputation management, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
being aware of all the different places, number one, that your brand can own a
Mhm.
profile or have a listing, like an owned listing, and also where your brand is being mentioned or talked about. There's one new tool on the market by Rand Fishkin. It's called Alert Mouse. It's a better
Mhm.
version of Google Alerts because Google Alerts kind of stopped working over the last few years. But check
Right.
out Alert Mouse. It's the best tool that I've seen so far for monitoring brand mentions. So you can put your brand in there and you can get like literally a daily recap of all the different times your brand has been mentioned. You want to make sure that you are claiming those profiles for all the different places that you can claim them, because that's a
Right.
defensive tactic. And then when people are talking about you, you obviously want to monitor what they're talking about at the very least. Try to get ahead of those conversations. And if it's something like I guess like Trustpilot or something, or like Yelp or like Google Business Profile, where you can potentially even have conversations with consumers about different
Mhm.
complaints that they might have, you want to get ahead of that too, because LLMs can literally look at all that conversational data.
There's no easy way to be able to extract that data once you find it. There's no easy way to combat that malicious data. Any recommendations on how that can be removed? Have you seen examples of kind of purging out some of that malicious poisoned LLMS data?
Um, it's really tricky right now, right? I think like a lot of this is going to boil down to like the LLM companies are going to have to, take care of the LLM poisoning, which is why, again, I'd be very, very careful to be involved in anything resembling
Right.
poisoning, because what you don't want is your brand or your website or your company or your information to be flagged as spam and then not included at all in future training
Hmm.
data. But really like just having monitoring in place, right? These different platforms and different websites have different systems that you can use. If someone said something defamatory about your brand, Google has ways that you can actually like file DMCA takedowns or whatever it is to like get, dangerous content removed from search results or removed from different websites. So just monitoring as much as possible, I think, is a good first step.
Absolutely, absolutely. Looking ahead, what guardrails like prompting rules, sourcing standards, or disclosure helps teams push for AI visibility without creating policy or PR risk?
Hmm. I mean, I think like it should be pretty self-explanatory if you're creating content for your users and in a way that's like digestible for AI search, or if you're kind of like pushing the boundaries of doing something that might be seen as unethical
Mhm.
or at least like spammy. I think I talked a little bit about like over engineering your content so it's really attractive to AI agents, but maybe when you're doing that, you're doing it in a way where it's not so much readable to humans anymore. Maybe it's very repetitive. Maybe you kind of lost that like nuance or that voice that's really appealing to your customers. I would be
Mhm.
really careful to go too far in that direction. I think some people right now are advising people to like only write for machines and don't think as much about your readers. The
Right.
reality is like we've had a lot of new data in the last couple of weeks that indicates that people are really starting to switch to Gemini as opposed to ChatGPT.
Hmm.
Who owns Gemini? It's Google. Who has the best anti-spam measures in the world? It's Google. And I think Google's been very clear for very, very many years about not serving different information to bots than they recommend serving to humans. In fact, they want to see that parity be as close as possible. So until we hear companies like Google and OpenAI literally saying, please give us different content for AI agents, which is like an example of that might be something like, the agentic commerce protocol that OpenAI recently launched. Like, yes, that's for bots, right? You can literally structure that for bots. Otherwise, anything that's going out there on the internet should be thought of as content that's for your readers as well. And I think where the LLMs are trying to go is they're trying to elevate what readers see the same way that search engines have been doing for a long time.
Couple questions from the audience, and thank you very much for answering my questions there. Lily, are there any specific platforms you'd recommend for a B2B business website to prioritize with visibility ranking in these LLMs in Google? This is from Sharaf. Any thoughts there?
That's a tricky one. There's like probably 250 new tools in our space, at least. And to be honest, I use a lot of different ones. Our agency is using Profound for LLM tracking, but we've also looked at a lot of other fantastic platforms. I want to be very clear that like I've demoed personally probably like 10 to 15 LLM trackers, and they're all really, really great in different ways. So I'm not necessarily loyal to any single one, but some of the big names are Profound, and SEMrush has AIO, Ahrefs Brand Radar, Conductor has a new tool. I would just look at the one that makes the most sense for you. You can demo a lot of different ones and figure out what fits your budget. Like Peak AI, for example, is a little bit more affordable. There's a tool called Waikay by Dixon Jones.
I was about to mention that. Absolutely. Yeah.
What AI knows about you. It's an acronym. It's WAIKAIY. Sorry. That's a really great one that's very affordable as well. So it kind of depends on your budget and what you're looking for, but have at least one, because these tools give you a glimpse into, even though it's not perfect, it's directional data about how frequently your website's being cited compared to competitors.
Roger that. Another question from Ian Chandler, Marketing. Are LLMs also flagging false positives for spam? If so, are there any technical or holistic steps that good actors can take to prevent that from happening?
It's a good question. I wouldn't really know on my end whether they have that problem. I would imagine at this point, probably not so much, because the reality is like they're already having a hard enough time flagging real spam that I don't know that there's too many, issues of false positives. I think that right now, if anything, there's a lot of like, let's say purely AI generated content that's quite spammy that is meeting their criteria for really good content. So I think they're kind of having the opposite problem where there's just so much obvious spam that's being treated as good content. Like think about the listicle problem. But I wouldn't really have a way on my end to know how big the false positive problem is just now.
Just going to channel my inner Will Reynolds. Don't do effing listicles going into 2026. Just to be able to, it's chunked, but it still is a place where you got to be able to present great content to your user. Don't go the machine learning path. You got to stay away from that. And we should be trusting that the LLMs are also going to be increasing their quality review of what they're actually presenting to the audience, right?
For sure. That's something I expect to be the biggest development in 2026. I think whether they explain this publicly or not, because we don't really know what OpenAI does in terms of like external communications about these things just yet. I do anticipate whether or not they communicate it publicly, we're probably going to see some type of huge model update with OpenAI where they're trying to get rid of a lot of this type of spam and poisoning.
Roger that. Well, Lily, thanks so much. There's a few other questions in there, but we're going to have to shift into our next presentation. Thanks a lot for what you've been able to cover. We're going to have this entire video online for the future SEO audience in 2026. Thanks so much and have a wonderful holiday.
Thanks for having me. You too.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome. All right. Shifting gears here. I just want to make sure that we talk about some of the factors that SE ranking has at your disposal for competitive research across AI search platforms and Google. It's live now. It's an incredible panel of LLM API connections there. You can do AI search across AI overview, AI mode, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini. As we're talking about measurement tools and monitoring tools, SE ranking certainly has that in spades. Along with that, you can analyze and optimize your brand mentions in top sources. That's also live now. So you can actually see the different AI answers and prompts associated to the individual URLs of your domain, along with coverage, and on top of that, domain trust, a number of different factors, as well as the last seen and first seen and last seen factors in the report itself. So go check out that tool explicitly. They have a special SEO Foresight offer. If you enter Foresight 26 at checkout, you can get 15% off of the SE ranking plans that they have, as well as the add-ons. And that's including content marketing, local marketing, the agency pack itself, which also gives you whitelisted client reporting, as well as AI search. You got to dive into what they've evolved over the last 3 years at SE ranking, a fantastic tool. They also have a fantastic API connection, as well as MCP connection. So please jump over there, claim within 30 days of sign up, contact support if you don't see the coupon. That's Foresight 26. All right, let's jump into our next conversation here. We're going to be talking about where decisions happen in 2026, Google AI mode and Google AI answer engines, or I should say AI answer engines, with Mike Korenugin, VP of Product SEO Solutions at SE Ranking. So, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Erin. Glad to be here.
You're more than welcome. Great to be able to see you at Brighton SEO this past year in San Diego. I'm going to tell the audience a little bit about you. You're the VP of Product SEO Solutions at SE Ranking. As the VP of Product and SEO Solutions at SE Ranking, he leads the product development strategy, overseeing the entire product lifecycle from ideation to execution. He's got a deep industry knowledge and passion for delivering cutting-edge technology that help SE Ranking maintain its position at the forefront of the SEO industry, along with the fact that that's such a focus that SE Ranking has had on SGE before it turned into AIO. You guys were studying this way before it was actually launched. It was still in test labs for the longest time. We talked about that several years ago. Congrats on the product and the evolution of the product that you're doing right now. I'm going to give this to you, Mike. Take it away. Show us where we are in 2026 coming up.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. And yeah, let's move right through. I mean, you guys have already been primed with Lily's chat and with Erin talking a lot about what's been changing on the internet recently. And yeah, my talk is all about that same thing too, while I'm also going to dive a bit deeper in the end into the tactics of it and into how SE Ranking can help you with all of that. And I think we can just start with getting out of the way the first and major point of what I want to tell you is why you want to be aware and why you want to invest into AI search. The thing that we are noticing and that everybody's noticing probably is that the internet is experiencing the fragmentation in search like never before right now. And if just some time ago your optimization strategy was purely focused on your Google search, it's no longer the case. And we're gonna first dive a bit deeper into why you want to care about more systems and not just Google. So first of all, a lot of you are probably just looking at your organic traffic and not seeing a lot of any significant change there, right? And a lot of our customers don't. We ourselves don't see the volume of organic traffic changing significantly with AI. Although a lot of people are talking about zero-click, right? But zero-click has been here forever. Yes, it impacted some industries more than others, but most of us, we have not yet seen a significant impact on organic search. So why do we still want to care about AI, you would ask? Well, the answer is fairly simple here. We can look into how many times people are searching on different platforms. And yes, Google is still king, right? I've seen somebody mention in the comments that Google is also the boss of AI right now. Yes, they are. They are the boss of the regular search with more than 14 billion searches per day. But at the same time, we see a lot of other systems that are chipping into the search volumes. You can see Perplexity, you see Claude, you see ChatGPT, Meta's AI. Obviously, Google's Gemini is also big. It's almost as big as ChatGPT right now. So all of this together, all of the LLM chats, searches, they add up to about 20 to 30% of all of the searches happening globally. And yes, right now we know that about only half of them are not generative. So even if it's like 10 to 15%, it's already a lot. On top of that, there's another big change that's been quietly happening in the background over the last 5 to 10 years. And it's social. Social has been steadily growing as a traffic source for a lot of the businesses. Right now, globally, what we're seeing is that social media brings about 10% of all of the referral traffic. While AI, when you look at this number, it's still abysmal, 0.18%, let's call it 0.2. This seems like nothing. But we've just looked at the search volumes. This means that the AI search, for the most part, this is what you'd call zero-click search. And what we see on our end and what our experts are seeing is that when your visibility in AI improves, you see the quality of all the rest of the channels improve. Now, moving into social media for a few more countries, like US is obviously leading the charge, and I think we can expect something similar for the rest of the world soon in the next few years, where social media grows from 10% average to 15% average of all traffic. EU is catching up with 11.5%. So social is big. And why it's big is because people, us, we like to see the content from other people. That's why I personally search for a lot of things, yes, on ChatGPT now, but also on YouTube. And my wife would search for a lot of things on TikTok or Instagram. The reason for that is that we prefer the content generated by other users, or UGC as they call it. And that's something that Google knows too nowadays. And that's what teams behind ChatGPT and Perplexity and other AI engines know too. Right now, if you take any keyword in Google, there's a 50% chance that in top 10 you're going to see a social link. And it's a similar situation with AI. In AI overviews, the sources, there's a 20% chance there's going to be a social source for a response. In AI mode, it's even higher. It's like 35 to 40%. And when we look into a lot of the types of the social systems that are being mentioned, obviously YouTube is the biggest one. You will also hear a lot about Reddit, but YouTube is still number one because it provides this kind of rich content that users love, and that's what you want to optimize too. Now, what I was leading to is that what you want to do and what we're doing in SEO Ranking is you want to meet your users where they are. If 5 to 10 years ago, what you could only think of as Google and how do I make sure that my website comes up at the very top in the blue links, right? It's number 1, 2, 3 spots to grab that share of the organic traffic. Well, the situation has changed significantly, and now users are searching across the board. Yes, Google is still big, and it's probably going to continue being big for some time. But at the same time, social media became a thing, and it's big now. And LLMs are even bigger, and people are combining multiple sources, multiple places where they're searching nowadays. And on top of that, they can even go ahead, and that's the way I make my purchases these days. I'll just go ahead, start a deep research in ChatGPT or in Gemini, and I'll ask it to find me whatever, like the new iPad stand that I'm looking for, telling them, hey, you know what, I just want a really small one that I can take into my backpack, or like something that I can put into my pocket. And it will actually find me the models, saving me those 15, 20, 30 minutes that I would have spent myself. And we need to as businesses, we need to optimize for all of these channels at once, especially because they're all interconnected. Because of that, we at SEO Ranking decided to bring to market different tools and combine different tools that are available in the market. We still have our own platform that's been with us for a very long time, which is SEO Ranking, our online solution that's based on all the needs of the SEO teams, and it's advancing into the AI age but we've also recently joined forces with Planable's team, who is focusing on letting the teams plan their content and optimize for social. And the last part that we've recently launched is SE Visible, which is a new product that focuses just on AI search visibility and making sure that you understand your position there and you know what to do next. And we're going to dive into a few of these tools just in a few moments. So yeah, I'm hoping that you're interested in understanding where you stand in AI search and how to get into it. So we're gonna dive into the demo very soon. But before that, again, let me lay down the foundation for the practical tips that Lily has shared just now, and reshare with you some of the studies that we've done recently. And for this study that I'm going to be showcasing, we actually took 1 million keywords/prompts and we ran them across AI mode and ChatGPT. And then we've looked into all of the sources that popped up, which was about a bit more than 3 million different sources, I believe. We ran them against the panel of on-page and off-page factors. It was more than 50, about 60 of them. And then we've also, on top of that, we've explored the volatility of AI mode. This is data as of middle of August, so it's still relatively fresh, and you can trust most of what you're going to see here. So this slide is the beauty part. This is it. This is the result of the study. I know it can be quite a bit hard to read, and it's probably not worth spending on like reviewing everything that you see here. So I'm going to make some of the highlights here and then the summary for you. Feel free to take a screenshot. This is actually a very good piece of data. You can find this in better quality on my LinkedIn too, if you want to, and you don't make the screenshot on time. So what you're seeing on the screen is the top 19, top 20 factors that were most influential most impactful, had the highest correlation in the likelihood of a page, of a website, becoming a source for either AI mode or ChatGPT. So as you can see, there are lots and lots of similarities between the two. They all rely on your total domain traffic and the number of referral domains. They all look into your page optimization, the page trust. So a lot of things that we're used to from the regular SEO work. You still want to work in your backlink profile and make sure that your website is mentioned. But what's new is these new engines, they also track your overall brand presence online. And Lily has been mentioning some of the tools available for this, for you to understand how often your brand is mentioned online. But you can also go ahead and just focus on how often it's mentioned in social and how much brand search volume you're getting. These are some good proxies if you don't have a separate tool. On top of it, what might be new for you on this slide, or something that you might have not taken into consideration as much, is that the content freshness plays much bigger role than it used to, and some little optimizations of the content. And I think Lily has talked about some of them, like how you work with your title and meta description and how you update your content frequently to make sure that it comes out on top. Because LLMs are really, really lazy. Both OpenAI and Google, they're trying to save their resources and provide the best experience possible while spending as little as possible. So they won't be oftentimes, or most times, they won't be parsing your page in full. They'll just look at the title and the description that was provided by their partners. That's specifically the ChatGPT, that would be the case, Perplexity, that would be the case. They'd be just looking at what the search engine is providing to pick the source. And so that's your biggest tool, how fresh the content is. And sometimes you can just go ahead and update the date of the content update, and that will work, although I would not recommend doing that. So just to quickly summarize this, and you can dig into that slide separately, and feel free to follow up with any questions if you've spotted any interesting numbers. To summarize this, there are a few groups of criterias and directions of work for your teams that really matter. And the first two, they come hand in hand. These are domain power and authority combined with brand power, where domain power and authority is something that I've talked about. Overall, how well known your website is, how many backlinks you've got, how much total traffic you get. This is a good proxy for how likely ChatGPT and AI mode are to mention you. But then something relatively new is the brand power, meaning how often your brand appears online. It doesn't have to be a link. And that's something that we're still getting used to, and a lot of the teams are still getting used to. So that's something that you want to keep in mind, especially mentions on social, like YouTube, like Reddit, like Instagram and TikToks. Those are taking up a significant share of sources. The third group is the technical SEO. This is your good old factors with just use Lighthouse to see how quickly your website loads and optimize for that. We've looked into a lot of the numbers there. My team strongly advised me against sharing any specific guidance here. But what we've seen is that essentially if you're in the green on the Lighthouse, the likelihood of you becoming a source is higher than if you are in the yellow to red zone. So performance matters, as well as good old technical optimization with titles, meta, and including your keywords into page URLs and titles. And the last but not least is something you're probably already working on, is content optimization. The only thing that's different is there's just a bit of a twist to it. Or the twist is that with traditional SEO, you typically don't want to focus on these super big content pieces that go into details of everything. You don't want to spoil your content in meta description and title because, well, if people see everything in search results, why would they open the page? Now you actually reverse that, and you go and you try to optimize your content to answer all of the possible questions the user would have, and include the questions themselves into headings and actual answers in the content as soon as possible. So that's the summary, and there's obviously a lot more to it. But instead of diving into the numbers more, we're going to do a bit of a practical part very, very soon. Just one more number. If you are in the local marketing space, like if you're running any kind of working for any kind of franchise, or you have to do with medical or with any other industry where Google tends to show essentially local pack, the map results, you might want to care about this number. What you're seeing on the screen is the 85% is essentially the volatility of AI mode for local searches if you're searching on the US level. What it means is that if you search the same thing twice, like, hey, the coffee shop, nearest coffee shop, you will see 85% different sources between these two queries. And even when you dive deeper into the city level, like imagine you're in the same city, in the same spot, and you ask nearest coffee place near me, you will still see over 50% difference in sources. And what we've seen there is that Google tends to pull a much broader range of sources at this point, and they're probably still learning from their audience, from us, into what people are clicking. So at this stage, you probably want to optimize for more local blogs, local content, to make sure that you show up in localized searches in Google's AI mode. So that's a short and hopefully sweet tip for you. Now, obviously, when you do this, one of the biggest questions is which prompts will actually work best for us and how to track the success there. And that's what we're going to dive into right now. Let me just go ahead and share my screen and show you how you can do this. Just a moment. All right. We'll kick it off with our dedicated product, which is SE Visible. What this does is it focuses you on a single metric right away. What is your visibility score? Or rather, how often do you come up in the prompts that you've selected? That's essentially what you want to optimize for. We're also working in the background on letting you understand the impressions that you're likely getting from these prompts. And that's something that you're probably going to see from SE Ranking later, like in the first quarter of 2026. But for now, this is the best you can get, I think, across most of the tools on the on the internet. So your visibility score is what you want to optimize for. And then on top of it, obviously, we had a lot of complementary information that can help you make the tactical decisions that will help you grow your rank. First and foremost, you can go ahead and look at this number by topic. So here I'm looking at Pandadoc as a brand. Pandadoc is a B2B SaaS for electronic signature, and there's a few segments of the market where it's present. So I'll look into, hey, proposal software, which is a software for commercial teams, for sales teams. Here, my visibility score is actually perfect. So let me go and look into something where I might actually have to apply more work. With a signature, it's even better. With DocGen, I'm also doing good, I'm assuming. So here, this brand is doing good. Still, I can appear on top more frequently. And I see that occasionally DocuSign would beat me, or there are other competitors. I can also look into which new competitors are coming up, what is the position that they're getting, and what is the sentiment that they receive. The sentiment side here is quite interesting. What it tells you essentially is how often when you're mentioned, AI talks about you in a positive light, negative light, or neutrally. For the most part, what you'll see is most mentions for most brands and most questions are going to be neutral. AI does not tend to add a lot of adjectives that will be descriptive of whatever the business is. Sometimes, though, it would include the positive mentions, and negatives come up rarely unless it's like a very well-known brand or there's a real PR nightmare going on, or people are really bad-mouthing your product on social. And that's something that you will be able to spot with this tool. Now, the next thing that you probably want to care about is sources. Lily has talked plentiful about the impact of listicle and different domains and sources here. So what you want to care about is here, rather, you'll be able to find those listicles and find the domains which you might want to optimize for. The way you do this is you simply filter by URL, and right away you'll see, okay, hey, here are some of the blog posts that are ranking online that are coming up frequently that I might want to work with. And you can go for a bigger date range to find more of them, and even open them in a separate view. So it's easier to just navigate the list and go page by page, review everything that you care about within the particular topic or across multiple topics. Here, in this case, I see that Zapier is a big thought leader. So it's a good opportunity for me to go and try to do some kind of co-marketing with them and to get some good visibility. On top of it, in terms of understanding your visibility, we obviously help you pick just a particular system to look into. Like you can go into seeing just Perplexity or multiple systems at once, where it's AI mode and Perplexity. But then once you know the visibility, it's awesome. But probably the first question that you've had is, well, Mike, I mean, visibility is cool, but what do I track? So here with SE Visible, we make it quite easy for you to get the prompts people are most likely searching you with. So the way you do it is you put in your brand name, you put in the website, you pick the location where you want us to run the queries for. In this case, I'll just stick to United States. Right now, we only support English, but there are quite a few more languages coming soon. So you can have those projects and picking and searching, rather assessing visibility across multiple languages and multiple locations at the same time. And what happens is for each language and location, we are helping you understand the niches that this product is most likely present in. And within those niches, we are finding and generating prompts that people are most likely asking. This is something that takes this hustle of, hey, I need to go and find what are the prompts that people are actually searching and pick just the ones that will work for me. We're actually doing a lot of this for you. And so once that's done, you'll be able to go into the list of prompts and see all of them and decide maybe some of them you don't want to track. Maybe you want to add a few others. You'll be able to remove the prompts that you don't like fairly easily, or add your own custom prompts. Just typing them in if you feel like something specific is missing. Now that's SE Visible. SE Visible is your high-level tool that'll help you understand your visibility, how competitors are doing, if you're getting any kind of bad or good PR recently, and which sources have been top of mind recently to find the co-marketing opportunities or find those listicles that you want to optimize for. Now, there's also a more granular tool that we provide as part of our SEO package, and I'm going to show that in a moment. All right, I hope you guys can see my screen. At SE Ranking, with SE Visible, I've started with showing like how you see the visibility. And I think here I'll do the same, and then we'll look into how you understand which prompts to add to your project. So in SE Ranking, we have this solution that's called the AI Results Tracker. And what it does is it helps you understand which brands and what kind of sources come up for each prompt and how frequently they do so. In this case, I'm tracking Panadoc again in Portugal with ChatGPT, but I also have quite a few other engines. And obviously, what's most important to me is, hey, what is the same visibility score? What is my mention and link presence? And here's my 50% visibility score for brand mention. That's my top of mind metric. Then, as we've just discussed, I need to work with sources. And this solution actually goes deep into sources. It helps you find the sources that have come up recently. In this case, there are 9 new sources that I can work with. Or it helps me find the sources that within the content of those pages don't mention me, or they're boosting my competitors without mentioning me. And I can quickly hit the View Sources button to see those right here in the list. So these are my 19 sources that are not mentioning me, but at the same time mentioning my track competitors that I've set up. And I can go ahead and I can pick the ones that I can work with and try and do the outreach. What's going to happen next is every day our system is going to check these sources for other competitors being mentioned or you being mentioned. And the moment you appear there, you'll know. One more thing that's worth mentioning here before we go further is that there's a very easy way for you to understand if your visibility is coming from sources or mentions. With SEO Visible, we focus on you appearing as a brand mention, and here we actually analyze both in depth because we see that some teams actually focus on becoming a source themselves too in a lot of cases, which is especially the case if you are running an informational business or a similar endeavor. Actually, see that we're short on time, so I'm gonna go and show you guys how you would understand your overall presence across different search engines with SE Ranking. Let's go with the same brand, Panadoc. This is for France. For consistency, let's go with the United States. So here we give you a really quick overview of how this brand appears across multiple different systems, including AI overviews, AI mode, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini. And with all of these systems, you can dive deeper into the prompts where you get a brand mention or where you get a link presence. So if you click on that number, what you're going to get is you're going to get a list of all these prompts with the understanding of what is the type of mention you're getting. For me, right now, this is a tool that helps me find the prompts where I'm already tracking. And for now, I'm focused on proposal software, let's say, and I'll just type in the search query like proposal, and I'll get a new list of prompts here. The moment I've got this, I can go ahead and pick the keywords and start tracking add them to the right project. In this case, it's going to be Panadoc, and add them to the AI engines that I care about. I'll just add them to all of them. Once I've added this, they're going to appear in my AI rank tracker, and I'll start tracking them daily. I think with us being short on time, I'll just wrap it up here and move into questions to see what you guys care about and what I've shown, and maybe we'll cover a few more things depending on where you want this to go.
Thank you, Mike. Wealth of information there. Do have one question from Kehun Marie 6767. Among the 4 categories: domain authority, brand power, technical, SEO, and content optimization, which one would you consider the primary priority for achieving visibility in LLM search results?
That's a great question. I'd rather, if we were talking about the primary priority, I'd rather not pick an entire category, but rather cherry pick single, like low-hanging fruit among the 4 of them. Like with content, the low-hanging fruit would be to go and work some short and sweet updates and optimizing your titles and meta description and URLs. So that would give you a quick win. Technical SEO, there's a lot to consider. So depending on where you're at with your website, it's probably not going to be a low-hanging fruit, but you still want to do this. So it's more of a long-term project. With domain power and authority, that's definitely something that I'd invest into, specifically from the perspective of getting mentions from YouTube and Reddit and other social systems, because those are, as Lily has shared too, those are in favor right now. And that's what you want to optimize for. Although you have to be careful when listening to advice online, because there are a lot of potentially toxic techniques that in a few years may do more bad stuff to you than the good stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Mike, valuable information. We certainly want to dive into SE Visible, because that's what we're looking for, these AI tracking agents where we can really get a handle and predictable visibility. So certainly implore everybody to check the tool out. I've done it myself, and it is amazing. So Mike, thanks so much for your presentation today. And again, everybody who's watching right now, share this this video after this, so we can get others involved and be able to see what we're doing on this online conference. Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. All right. Hey, jumping in, I want to make sure that you know about SE Ranking Academy, AI for SEO. There's an expert framework. You can look at the tools, the tactics that work, and discover how AI can supercharge your SEO. There's a QR code on the screen right there to be able to check that out. It's a free course, a number of great professionals in AI and SEO that you can see on screen right there. And the links to these resources will be in the chat. So make sure you check out that. Along with that, SE Rankings Model Context Protocol, the MCP server. There's a great workshop from Gaffer Ballister, Senior Product Manager over at SE Ranking, QR code there as well. Gives an entire presentation of why you need MCP and what's it mean, and how can you benefit, and what can you actually create with that connection. So the QR code's right there. Links will also be in the chat. They're already there. All right. Shifting over to our next presentation from Jonjo Rowlands.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We've got you. Hey, let me introduce you to everybody who's watching on YouTube here. Jonjo, he's an experienced SEO, digital marketing strategist. He brings a wealth of knowledge from years of helping brands improve their online visibility and performance. Known for his insightful, practical approach, he combines technical experience and expertise with a relatable communication style, making complex SEO concepts accessible and actionable. And I certainly appreciate that, especially where we're going in the deeper wells of AI ranking and performance. So we need some of those analogies and metaphors, Jonjo.
That's it.
I'm going to hand it over to you. This is your presentation. Go for it.
My name is Jonjo, so I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to be invited along today to talk about branding and visibility, which I'm sure you're aware is a very hot topic in the SEO world at the moment. So a tiny little bit about me. My name is Jonjo. I'm founder of Jelly, which is a digital marketing agency based in Portsmouth on the south coast of the UK, which is very cold and rainy and horrible at the moment. But I've been in digital for over 15 years now, so you can believe me when I say that I have definitely seen my fair share of changes in the industry, and this is another big one that we're going through at the moment. And I often get asked to speak at industry events, particularly around SEO and behavioural science. A huge number of people on LinkedIn and on YouTube and other platforms all trying to sell you this dream, I think, of automating your entire business with AI as if it's some kind of miracle platform, which is obviously nonsense. And I love AI. I do think it's a brilliant tool when used in the right way. But I feel the need to differentiate myself, I think, against the kind of the SEO bros who are trying to shill some kind of AI automation tool against what I'm wanting to do today. So I'd like to start by letting you know that I certainly don't have a giga prompt for ChatGPT, whatever that means. I don't promise some spammy ways to publish 2,000 articles in one click, or indeed any of the other too good to be true, clickbaity types of videos and articles on LinkedIn that you might have seen over the years. And this is just a tiny proportion of the ones that are out there. My advice generally is to ignore all of these kinds of SEO and GEO now bros, or anyone who says SEO is dead, or anyone who's trying a little bit too hard to make GEO a thing. So let's get into it. Now, I want to start in a slightly unusual way today. I want to go back to the absolute basics, because I think that is the only way that we can properly understand what's changing now that we're living in the age of AI search. So we're going to go right back to the beginning and talk about how SEO works in super simple terms. So every traditional search always starts with a user wanting to find some kind of information, whether that's a question or they want to find a product. They're just looking for something. When they go to Google, they type in a keyword, and Google then searches its vast database for what it considers the most relevant sites for that particular keyword. And it displays them in a SERP, which stands for Search Engine Results Page. And the user then chooses a result from the list and lands on the web page. Keywords. So the keywords are, of course, the words or phrases that people type into Google in order to find what they're looking for. And there are a vast range of different types of keywords. Sometimes it's just one word, sometimes a whole phrase, sometimes a question. Keywords come in all shapes and sizes. In the early days of SEO, as I like to call them, the glory days, you could just put a keyword on the page 50 times and call it a day. That's when I used to have an easy job. You can't do that anymore. Google's obviously a lot more sophisticated now. And that means that SEOs quickly learned that individual keywords don't tell the whole story. What really matters actually is the intent behind them. So we have this concept in SEO of keyword intent. Basically, you need to understand what people are actually trying to achieve with their search. There are four main types of keyword intent. They are navigational, commercial, transactional, and informational. And we need to understand what each of these mean. So navigational is looking for a specific resource or a specific website or page, because nobody goes to a browser and types www.facebook.com. You just go to Google, type Facebook, and you click the top link. So keywords like that we refer to as navigation. And it could be, for example, it could be your brand name. They're just looking for your website and that's it. Then commercial keywords are research before making a purchase. And obviously that could be a product or a service. Basically anyone who is looking to buy something down the line and they're researching and comparing before they make a decision. So an example would be best SEO agencies. They're obviously looking to compare the different options that they've got. Then transactional keywords are when people are ready to make a purchase or take an action now. So keywords like buy coffee online, I put here, is a good example of that. They're not looking to compare anymore necessarily, they're actually ready to part with some cash now. And then finally, we have informational keywords, and these are your who, what, where, why, how, question type keywords. An example would be, what is a canonical tag? They aren't looking to necessarily engage an SEO agency, they're just looking to learn about the topic or answer a question. And they're the four main types of keyword intent. And individual keywords can be in multiple categories, the lines blur, but broadly, those are the four types of intent. So until recently, every type of keyword intent was dominated by one player, and that obviously was Google. They had this kind of monopoly. But what we're seeing now is a diversification in the types of search engines that people are using. And obviously, there's always been players like Bing and DuckDuckGo, things like that. They're still traditional search engines. So for simplicity, I just call them Google. That's basically the same thing. But what we have now is not just people potentially choosing an alternative search engine, but people going to different types of platform entirely for certain types of keywords. And if you listen to the LinkedIn hustlers, you might be inclined to believe that the modern search landscape looks a little bit like this. In reality, that's not true. It's not as simple as people are searching on ChatGPT now. It's way more complicated than that, unfortunately. So firstly, Google still absolutely eclipses ChatGPT in terms of overall search volume. But also the reality is that search engine choice depends on keyword intent. And that's the whole reason why I wanted to look at the keywords and the keyword intent, is because it's not as simple as people are trying to make out. It looks, in reality, a lot more like this. Certain types of keyword are still very much dominated by Google, and I think they will be for the foreseeable future. Navigational keywords I put here as a primary example of that, because nobody is going to ChatGPT and type in Facebook login as a quick way of navigating to Facebook. It's just not happening. It probably never will. And equally, there aren't very many people going to ChatGPT and just typing buy coffee online, although obviously OpenAI very much working on that. They would like that to be the case. But you might go to Google. You also might very well go to Amazon for that kind of search intent. But what we do see is for commercial and informational keywords, different types of search engine are becoming a lot more important. If people want to learn about a topic, people seem to be growing more and more comfortable with using. I was just about to say is that this Christmas I'm supposed to be cooking roast goose for 9 people. I've never cooked goose before. I've only ever done turkey. Years ago, I might have Googled that and read an article. Now I go to TikTok and watch a 30-second video because it matches my intent far better. So the point that I want to make by saying that is that this isn't actually particularly new. SEOs like me have been dealing with this type of thing for years and years now. So one way to determine the value of a keyword is by looking at search volume. That's roughly how many people search for it per month. And as an example, 15,000 people a month, roughly, search for the keyword, how old is Taylor Swift? And once upon a time, that would have been an extremely valuable keyword to rank #1 for, right? Because people would click on your link, visit your site and find the answer, and you could monetize that through ads. Nowadays, that keyword, despite being searched for probably just as often, is practically worthless, because when you click it, when you search for it, you get the answer directly in the results page. So you never click on a website. And of course, that's called a zero-click search. It's been happening for years now. And so us SEOs, we know a thing or two about operating in a post-click era. And broadly, it just means we need to focus on different strategies, which I will go on to explain. So that's a high-level overview of what's happening, I think, in search at the moment. And the next thing we need to talk about is why brand. Why am I saying that the most important thing for SEO in 2026 will be your brand? Well, the main reason is that search engines love brands, right? And because, and I think for good reason, if you think about it. So Google's goal, like any company, is to make as much money as possible. And in order to do that, they need to keep people coming back to the platform. And in order to do that, they need to give people what they want. And what people generally want is results that they can trust. We've found that users are far more likely to click on and be satisfied by a website that they recognize than an unknown entity, because culturally, brands, they are sort of a shorthand for credibility and quality. So over time, when all the data comes in, Google has aligned its algorithms to favor established authorities. It's about as simple as that. Now, it's worth saying that this doesn't mean that you have to be Coca-Cola or Nike in order to rank in Google, because brands come in all different sizes, but branding is really important. And the way Google measures this is through a metric called Site Quality Score. It was about a year ago now, I think. A Google exploit was discovered by Mark Williams Cook, and it gave us incredible insight into this. If you haven't already, I urge everybody to watch this video all the way through, because it is absolutely excellent and it goes into some detail. But the part that we're particularly interested in today is how Google decides on a quality score for your site. And Mark found that there were 3 main factors. Those are anchor text relevance across the web and how often your brand name appears in anchor text on other sites. The next is user interactions, and that's particularly so how often people choose your result in search, even when you don't rank in position number 1. And then how often people search for your brand by name. So essentially, I think this is a measure of how famous your brand is within your niche. So hopefully I've convinced you now that brand is incredibly important for SEO. So now we're going to look at what you actually need to do in order to get ahead in 2026. And the good news is that if you've been doing solid SEO, I think you're 95% of the way there, because nobody should be tearing up their existing SEO strategies. The main reason for that is because most of what people are calling GEO and AEO, etc., is what we've been doing for years in SEO anyway. But there are some specific best practices that you can implement now that will dramatically, I think, increase your chances of being cited in answer engines as well as in traditional search. And at Jelly, we call these the 4 T's. They are technical optimization, trust signals, topical authority, and talkability. And I'll explain what each of those means now. We'll start with technical optimization. So the main thing to remember, I think, is that both humans and bots are visiting your website. So Google and ChatGPT, they all have bots that crawl your site. But the humans and the bots, they're not seeing the same thing. Humans see what's on the left, and the bots are much more comfortable with what's on the right. That means we need to present that information to the bots in a way that they can best understand and read it. First thing we obviously need is fast, accessible code. And one way you can test this is by using SE Ranking's website speed test tool. So you just need to go to the link here, type in your website address, and it will test your page and give you a score out of 100. 90 plus considered good. Most sites, I think, probably in the 60s or 70s. And if it's anything under that, that's a sign you have some kind of issues that you should probably address with your developers. That's a really good tool. And then the next thing I want to talk about in terms of technical optimization is schema. And for those who might not know, the best way I can describe schema is that it's, I call it like Google language. It's code that helps search engines understand context. So as a human, you're pretty good at understanding context. If you see a number on a web page, you can usually tell whether it's, for example, like a price or a phone number just from visual cues and experience. And to be fair, robots are pretty good at this, but they can make mistakes. So what we do is we use schema to explicitly tell the robots exactly what everything is. And it sits in the back end of the site, so no human ever sees it, but it helps the robots understand you a little bit better. Now, schema has traditional SEO benefits, and the main one is that it makes your site eligible for rich results and rich snippets in search. So a normal result might look like this. It's just a link, meta description, and that's it, really boring. But a rich result, on the other hand, can have images, it can have star ratings, it can have pricing data, a whole range of other things that make it far more likely that your site will then be clicked. But there are also now, I think, branding benefits to schema as well. And the reason for that is because it helps to establish your business as a unique entity. So it might, for example, prevent Google from confusing you with other companies maybe that share a similar name, things like that. And there's a really cool tool that you can use to understand what entity information Google holds about your brand. So you just go to the link on the left or use the QR code and you put in a keyword. So you might put your name, you might put your company name, and you'll get a nice list of all the entities that Google knows about that are related to that keyword. So it can be really useful to put your brand name in there, see what Google understands about it, and make sure that it actually agrees with reality. So we know schema is super important, and to test whether you have schema on your site in the first place, or if it's good enough, you can use my handy schema extractor tool using this link. So you just paste that into your paste your web address into the tool, and what it will do is it'll scan the site, extract the schema, and you can then analyze it and see what you've got on there. And it's also a really good way of looking at your competitors' schema to see if there's anything that they're doing that you might then want to emulate. If you don't have any schema, or if there's more schema types that you think you should add, reach out to your web developer and get that sorted, because it's a really, really good win. Now, you may or may not have seen on LinkedIn, etc., talk about implementing a specific file for LLMs called LLMs.txt. My advice broadly at the moment is that it's not worth worrying about, because all the major AI platforms have said that they don't use it. And I implemented one on my website, and I can see from the server logs that it hasn't been accessed a single time. It's just simply not being used. So it's not going to hurt, but it's also not worth the effort right now, just not worth bothering with. So that's technical optimization. It's always been important, but I think today it's more important than ever in the kind of new world of SEO. Next up, I want to talk about trust signals. So trust signals include things like reviews and accreditations and awards, or anything that confirms to the humans and also to the bots that you're a real and reputable business. And the more consistent and verifiable these signals are, the more confidently both users and, of course, the machines will trust your firm. So for a long time, this isn't really new. For a long time now, it's not been enough to say, we offer this service, or we sell this product, or write a blog that says, this is what this thing means. You have to actually show your receipts. You have to prove it. You have to prove that you are an authority on a topic. And it's even more important if you operate within YMYL, which stands for your money or your life. So that's basically any site that deals with topics like healthcare or finance. They're held to a much higher standard in Google, and as they should be, because if Google gets it wrong, there could be real world consequences. But it's important for all sites. And by the way, one thing that never gets mentioned when we talk about trust signals is you do actually have to have good content in the first place. You have to actually be an authority on a topic. So the tips I'm going to show you are totally useless if you don't have that as the bare minimum. So I'm going to assume your content is great. I'm going to look at how we can get Google to notice that properly. Firstly, we have third-party reviews, and it doesn't have to be Trustpilot. Any third-party review platform will do. But the key is that it does have to be, I think, a third-party platform. Testimonials that you publish on your website that you directly control are pretty much worthless in the eyes of bots, because you could obviously write anything and give yourself 5 stars and just make that the reviews. You should be sending your customers review requests as standard in order to build up your reviews. And I always recommend, where possible, I know it's hard in the first place just to do this at all, but it's where possible to spread them around and to different platforms. So not all your reviews live in one place. Because if you lose your Google business profile, for example, which does happen, I've seen it all the time, and your reviews are all on there, overnight they could be gone. So build reviews in multiple places if you can. And next, you really should be implementing an up-to-date Meet the Team page. At bare minimum, it should have a decent photo of everyone, preferably all in the same style, a little bit about their expertise, and something a lot of people forget is a link to their LinkedIn profile, because that acts as social proof. It's a much stronger signal than just writing this person is an expert, because it proves that it's a real person with real expertise. And then finally, we have author blocks. Every single blog post that you publish on your site should have an author attributed to it. And it's often overlooked, and it becomes even more important now because ChatGPT is a thing, and creating content in general is easier than ever. So when bots are crawling that content, they need to quickly work out what's actually worth listening to and what is a load of rubbish. Having a specific expert attached to an article is one of the best ways to signal that this is quality, well-researched content, with the caveat being that it does actually have to be quality, well-researched content. You can't just slap an author block onto some AI slop and expect anything to happen. Now, that only really scratches the surface of all the possible trust signals that you should be considering. So what I've done is I've put together a free trust signal checklist that you can use to audit your site, and it's got hundreds of possible trust signals for you to look into. So you just go through the list, give your site a pass or a fail for each one, and you'll end up with a long list of actions and ideas that you can use to improve your site. So that's trust signals. It's a really important factor in modern search. Next up, we're going to talk about topical authority. So topical authority is, I like to call it the depth and consistency of your expertise on a specific subject. It's built by covering a topic comprehensively, rather than just sort of on a surface level. So answering every single question that somebody might have on a topic. That means rather than having just a single landing page on a topic and calling it a day, you need to build a complete cluster of related content on the topic in order to show rounded expertise. Search engines and now AI models recognize these patterns, and eventually they learn to associate your site with that topic, which in turn makes you a viable source whenever it's mentioned or queried. So the first thing you need to know in order to cover a topic fully is what are people actually asking. So let's say that you are a Christmas tree retailer. You've built your website, you've got a solid landing page selling your Christmas trees. Now you need to round out your authority on the topic of Christmas trees. And to do that, we need to do some keyword research. So your first port of call is obviously going to be SEO ranking. And I don't have enough time today to go through a full keyword research strategy, but broadly speaking, our goal is to map out a cluster of related subtopics and to use that to create new content on our site. So we're looking at all the different types of similar keywords, related keywords, and all the questions that real people are actually asking and want to know. So if we're that Christmas tree firm, we have our rock solid landing page for Christmas trees at the top. And from there, we look at all the questions that people have related to Christmas trees, and we might then be able to group those into 3 broad pillars. So here I've put the species of Christmas trees, caring for your tree, and maybe then queries around sustainability and that side of things. And then we can start to create the content within those clusters, and through internal linking, we start to build and grow our authority for the overall subject of Christmas trees. Quite often I talk about these things with clients as a necessary evil. We don't really want to start publishing pages and pages about the difference between Norman fir and Norway spruce and things like that, but it's a necessary evil because we have to do that in order to prove that we're experts on what we actually really want to rank for, which is selling Christmas trees. So that's topical authority, and it's really, really important now for owning a topic and for getting excited in things like AI overviews. And finally, we have talkability. Now, this isn't, I don't think, really the best name for it, but it's the best I could think of because it had to start with a T. But essentially, this is being part of the conversation or being talked about outside of your website. And it's really the final piece of the puzzle, and probably the hardest part of the puzzle. So up until now, we've been talking about things that we can achieve on our own sites. So pretty much we can do what we want. But now we're talking about things that happen on other platforms and other websites that we might not have direct control over. So it becomes much more difficult. And these, they are some of the strongest signals to search engines that you're an authority. And the reason is, well, of course, we're going to say that we're experts on a topic, but if you can get third parties to back you up, it's a much, much stronger message to search engines and to humans. I'm sure everyone's aware of the importance of things like backlinks of other websites linking to you. Google sees that as essentially a vote for your website, and it's for much the same reason. It's a third party backing you up. So firstly, I want to talk about citations. So a citation in this context, it's a structured listing of your business details online, and it helps to confirm to the crawlers who you are, where you're based, and essentially that you are real and trading. And generally speaking, the more you have, the better. Examples are your Google business profile, directory listings, but also don't forget your social media profiles. They also count for this, and to make sure you have them set up, make sure you post them regularly. There are some best practices for citations. The most important one is this: keep your NAP data identical everywhere. So NAP stands for name, address, phone number. It's really important to keep it consistent across every touch point. So for example, if your name is ABC Solicitors and all your directory listings have different versions of that, it's sometimes difficult. Remember when we were talking about entities earlier, it's difficult for search engines to actually consistently link them back to you. So much of the benefit of them could be lost if it doesn't necessarily see those as the same thing. So make sure you search your brand name regularly and make sure that any mention of you is consistent, and you choose one and stick with it. So the next thing we need to do is make sure that you list on as many credible platforms as possible, with credible being the important part there. So generally, the more listings you have, the better, because in the eyes of Google, the more visible you are on a number of different touch points, the more real and established you look. But there's no value in being on platforms that themselves have no credibility. So start with the main ones, start with the Google business profile, Bing places, directories like Yell in the UK. And don't forget industry-specific ones as well. There's lots and lots of really, really good ones in every single little niche. And then finally, we need to be as active as possible with posting, so on socials, but also on your Google business profile, which I know it's easier said than done, especially if you're a smaller brand, because there just aren't enough hours in the day. But it is really important because businesses that are active will always be prioritized, and regular posting is one of the best ways, I think, to signal that. And then finally, there are mentions. So mentions it's something you can't directly control, because basically it's other people talking about you online. And unless you're Apple or Coca-Cola, it's really difficult to consistently achieve. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some of the best practices, because if you can do it, it will put you miles ahead of your competitors, especially if you're a local brand. And it's definitely the hardest part that we're going to try. So the first thing to do is encourage conversations about you. So the easiest and most obvious one is to encourage reviews. So everyone should be doing that as standard, but also encouraging conversations on socials and on forums like Reddit. It's not easy because it takes time and it can definitely backfire, especially Reddit is one of the most cited sources for AI information. So being active on there can be a huge win. And I do appreciate that it's easier for some brands than others, but it is possible for loads, a much wider range than people realize. For example, I find for hospitality brands, it's pretty easy, I think, to generate conversations. You just go to your local town subreddit, post about dinner recommendations, and then with another profile, we recommend your restaurant or hotel, easy peasy. But obviously, it's a little bit sneaky, and it does happen all the time, but it's a little bit sneaky. And it's also very possible that it could backfire, because Redditors, they will not hold back if they sniff out marketers. So often a better way, I find, is to just be upfront and to create a branded profile and just join the conversation naturally without being overly salesy, without spamming every single thread, just adding genuine value to the conversation. If you do that, you probably won't go far wrong. And then we have local and industry coverage. Basically, this is just digital PR. So the goal is to be mentioned as much as possible by credible sources. And again, not every business is going to be able to regularly send press releases and just get loads of local coverage, but it's really powerful if you can do it. And I genuinely believe that there are ways of doing this for any business, even like the really boring ones. So for example, I once helped this really dry, but cool, really dry IT management company get local coverage by running a digital skills session for a local school, and then they sent a press release, and they got good coverage, and they got the all-important backlink. It was really, really low effort. And finally, a nice, easy one. You should be making the most of any content that you do produce. So, for example, if you do publish a blog post, you should also be posting it on your Google business profile, on LinkedIn, and as many other places as possible online, and even encourage your employees to do the same if you can. So make the most of the work you do, and it'll get you far more value out of it. So those are the 4 T's of search visibility in this new AI era, and it's really just a reframing, I think, of traditional SEO. Nothing I've spoken about today is really that new, and that's because what's working hasn't really changed all that much. It's just the framework and the environment that we're working in has changed. But I hope that's given you lots of things to think about. And I guess, any questions?
All right. Hey, thank you, Jonjo. That was a great roll through of trust and credibility and citation needs that all brands need. Hey, real quick question before I go over to QAs. Engines like Perplexity and ChatGPT, Atlas, the foreground citations, which asset types would most reliably earn those citations? Original data, expert commentary, comparisons, or FAQ hubs? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's still very similar to the playbook that we had before. We just want to be creating as much content as possible. It's slightly changed. You can't run a business now like you used to be able to. That's sort of purely blogging focused and sort of right. And using that type of model that you used to be able to do. It's not the same as that anymore. It needs to make sense in the context of the wider business, and it needs to make sense within the pillars that you've got. Your services are the most important thing, and the pillars need to lead out. But I still think there's room for be creating as much content as possible.
Absolutely. Got a question from the audience here. Jonjo, which brands brand signals should teams prioritize in 2026 to ensure their credibility carries into AI-generated answers while still preserving the brand's unique human tone?
Unique human tone. I think that's one of the key things, actually,
Yep.
the human tone, because I see anybody who works in digital marketing and looks at a lot of websites will start to recognize the ChatGPT voice, and it's got a certain type of words and phrases, and it's a semantic style that you just notice time and time again when you start clicking through. So having that kind of human connection, I think one of the things is, I almost think of this as part of my manifesto for 2026. SEOs need to understand and realize that branding is part of their job. And they need to understand and read the brand guidelines and realize that they are so every single piece of content. It's not branding content and SEO content anymore. It doesn't work like that. Everything is all one thing. And so every single piece of content that you produce has to be on brand and has to have that kind of voice, because people are becoming wiser. It's not just us in the sort of digital space that are seeing it all the time. I see it all the time in comments and on anything. It's like, this looks like it was written by ChatGPT. People are becoming wise to it. And so, that is a really, really important part of the question there, the unique human tone. Make sure that you are speaking as the brand and always sound like you're from the brand.
And that presupposes that they have a brand guideline. If they don't, clients or agency, what have you, they got to develop that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the really, really important tools that everybody should really understand. I always think of brands as people, and if it's almost like you're role playing as a character. Would my character say this? No, they wouldn't. They would say it in this way. They would say it in this way. It's I think that's just a nice sort of framework and a mindset to be in when you're thinking about brands. Yeah.
Absolutely. Last question, and thank you, Jacob Miller, for that question from Shana Aguilar. What do you make of the fact that AIOs seem to have split YMYL? Healthcare has some of the most AIOs, while finance has some of the fewest.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most dangerous things about AI search in general. The fact that there are, we all know that that AI platforms, every single one of them still hallucinates to some degree, and measures been put in place. But it's I don't think it goes anything close to far enough, especially for YMYL topics. And healthcare is probably the most important one. There have already been situations where people are putting really important healthcare type topics into AI overviews and getting results that just either aren't true or that are sort of almost true. It's almost quite right, but it's just not, and it can be dangerous. And so I think that is something where we need to see more guardrails in place for those types of topics. I think broadly that's what we're going to see. Google is widening what it refers to as YMYL. We've seen that last year. There was an update where sort of a wider section of topics are coming into that category. They take this kind of thing seriously, but I think are just trying to rush out AI overviews so quickly to take out some of the ground that they lost when ChatGPT and OpenAI started sort of getting ahead in the AI space. They needed to quickly rush out their products, and I think that has meant that we've had situations like that where things are rushed out now. But yeah, it needs to come back, and it needs to have more guardrails in place, because it will affect people's lives. People will put something in there and something will go wrong. We've always seen the kind of like jokey ones where it'll say something obviously, silly. Someone will post it to LinkedIn or onto Instagram or whatever, and we will have a laugh about it. But when it's actually something serious, then we need to take this kind of stuff much more seriously.
Absolutely. Well, Jonjo, thank you so much for your presentation today. I really do appreciate the time and the information that you've got in your deck, and all these videos will be available for everybody in post. Thanks so much, Matt. We'll keep on going.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Everybody, just taking a quick break. Having a look at SE Ranking SEO platform for agencies and in-house pros. You got to check out this link. You've got competitive research, website audits, keyword rank checking, backlink checker. They've got 30 plus tools in their toolbox there, especially the AI search tool that they've been evolving for a number of years here. Check out the link. Link's going to be in the chat channel as well. If you go to this link, there's a benefit of actually submitting your business email as opposed to your personal email. You're missing out on their expanded trial. You can see right here on the screen, you don't get keyword lists or keywords. You don't get expanded limits. You can't export your data. There's a slew of information on the business side if you register your business email to get more out of your trial. They've got a lot of additional factors of website audits and what have you. So go check out that. And again, links in the chat itself. All right. Next on board here, AI mode versus top stories, where news SEO wins and loses in 2026 with Barry Adams. I know this guy.
I know that guy.
Barry, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Erin. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. Thanks for joining us on the online conference. I'm going to introduce you. I could do multiple introductions. You've been on the show a number of times, but for everybody who's not familiar with Barry, got to check this guy out. He's a specialized SEO consultant at Polemic Digital. He's a veteran SEO consultant with roots in the industry dating back to 1998. He continues to shape how top publishers reach and grow their online audiences with his consultancy, Polemic Digital. He delivers expert technical and editorial SEO services for major media brands globally. He's known for clear, no nonsense, and sometimes punchy communication style and practical approach. He bridges deep technical understanding with strategic mindset, making SEO accessible yet powerful. Barry, it's great to be able to have another conversation with you. I'm going to recede in the background here and let you run with it.
Thank you very much for that intro. I really appreciate that.
You're more welcome.
Let me get the slides up. There we go. That was quite an intro. I really appreciate that, which means I don't have to do my own intro, which is great. So I can just skip this, and I skip this as well. This is just basically me showing off, and nobody likes to show off. We're talking about AI, and the whole theme today has been about AI, and I'm going to talk specifically about AI and Google search and how that has impacted news publishers. So a lot of that stuff you'll probably already know about that, but I'm going to reiterate it a little bit as well to sort of set the scene and set the context. AI overviews is, of course, the big place where AI is integrated into Google search. We have these summarized answers at the top of a search result. They are created using Google's Gemini, large language model, multi-step reasoning capabilities. Not 100% accurate. I don't know how many people have mentioned hallucinations so far before, but I still regularly see them in AI overviews. And I'm more than mildly annoyed because they are presented with a lot of confidence at the top of a search result, but that confidence isn't necessarily warranted because, you know, we call it AI, and it's sort of become standard parlance that, hey, this is AI tools, but they're not really intelligent in a meaningful way. They're word predictors. They're very good word predictors, but they're still word predictors. They don't think, they don't reason. They just predict the most likely next word, the most likely next sentence. And they have some recurring algorithms that make them smart, but they're only smart in the sense that a dictionary is smart. They don't create new knowledge, they don't create new insight, they just regurgitate what they ingest. So that's also why they often get things wrong, because they just predict words, and sometimes the words that are most likely to follow aren't necessarily accurate in any way, shape, or form, and not reflective of the reality that we live in. You cannot prevent hallucinations. I even asked Google and got an AI overview of whether it's possible to prevent hallucinations with LLMs. The answer was no. It's just inherent in the technology. And that's something we do need to keep in mind whenever we start relying more and more on AI to present us with the information. And especially when it comes to things like news stories and news events, if you get an AI summarized or AI generated answer, it might not actually be entirely accurate of what actually happened in the world and what the news websites are reporting. Of course, search engines like Google use grounding mechanisms where they perform searches in the background, summarize those to feed into the generated answer. This is, of course, by now should be all familiar to most of the audience. And they're quite good at attributing sources. So you get a source there, often directly in the AI overview, a list on the side. If you expand the AI overview, you get a lot more sources, one for every particular section of text and content, and then a full list there on the right-hand side, or if you're on mobile, in the form of a carousel at the bottom of an AI overview. On average, most AI overviews would have 5 or 6 sources there. It's very, very rare when an AI overview does not show any sources at all. So the average number of cited sources is about 6, but keep in mind that less than half of all those cited links are actually ranked on the first page of the search result. They cast a bit of a broader net than they do with classic search. Available now in over 200 countries, 40 languages. There's a whole list of them on a Google support document. I think pretty much almost everywhere where Google is active as a search engine, there will also be AI overviews present, with very few exceptions. And the exceptions generally are for legal reasons, where the particular nation's information office is perhaps a bit fiercer against Google's integration of AI. This is the interesting bit. When there's a top stories box at the top of a Google search, so it's what Google would classify as a news query, we tend not to see an AI overview. There are some exceptions, and those exceptions are generally when the news is what we'd say relatively old. By relatively old, I actually mean a few hours, like 6 to 8 hours old, and there's nothing new that has emerged in that 6 to 8 hours. So it's basically a one-off news event. Within a few hours, Google will be able to then summarize that news event in an AI overview. And you might get an AI overview on the same page as a top stories box. I've seen this happen in different contexts. Sometimes the AI overview is below the top stories box, a bit further down the search result. Sometimes it's just above the top stories box. So it does occasionally happen that you see news boxes as well as AI overviews, but generally for nearly all search results where there is a news box, there will not be an AI overview. And I think Google does this on purpose. It's a very deliberate decision that Google has made to avoid what they call hard news when it comes to AI summaries. And that's because until the AI has ingested all the content related to that news story, they cannot accurately summarize what is happening. And that ingestion is a bit of a delayed process. It's not real time. It's not as fast as classic indexing, that's for sure. So Google says, right, we're just going to show top stories, and then maybe later down the line, if there's nothing new happening, we can show an AI overview summary of that news story. But initially, when you publish an article on the news website and you're aiming for top stories visibility, which is where most news publishers will get the majority of their Google traffic from, you are not competing with an AI overview. Of course, you are competing with AI overviews for anything that's not direct hard news. For explainers, for background articles, for evergreen articles that you have, you are competing with AI overviews. And of course, news publishers also publish this sort of content in very large scales, and therefore they are feeling the impact that AI overviews have on their traffic. There's some tools out there you can use to monitor how often AI overviews appear for your classic searches. I quite like what Systrix is now doing with their AI monitoring tools. They also see which particular queries trigger an AI overview and whether or not you're cited as a source for those AI overviews. So that gives you some data at least to look at where the impact is in terms of the AI overview potentially stealing your clicks, stealing your traffic, or using you as a cited source. When it comes to optimizing for those AI overviews, we can talk about this often. People generally don't click that much from an AI overview to cited sources, but you still ideally want to be part of it, at least get a chance to get a click. I quite like that AI overviews actually cast a bit of a broader net than regular search results. It's not just the 10 blue links. Several different studies, this one from ZipType, for example, shows that a lot of the cited sources come from outside the traditional search results. And they tend to focus on clusters of content. You have a cited source here for pain relief related to tooth extraction. You get sent to a cluster of content, a particular paragraph of content on a web page that talks about this. Similarly, best Polish delicacies. I got this screenshot because several months ago I was in Poland for an event and I wanted to know what kind of food I should try when I was there. You click on any of these cited sources, you get sent to listicle pages, specifically to the section of that listicle that talks about that particular delicacy, skipping the rest of the page. I find it quite interesting. This one is another example, inlay soles, pain relief. Again, you get sent to a paragraph of content related to that particular aspect of the query. So this leads us to the chunking optimization tactic. I mean, I'm a little bit ambivalent about this, to be entirely honest. I don't think we should necessarily restructure all our web pages just to tap into these fairly ephemeral citation mechanisms. But if you want to be shown to do busy work to your bosses, to your clients, from hey, we're targeting LLMs, we're targeting optimization for AI overviews. This is one thing you can do. It's probably not going to hurt your classic SEO. It might help your efforts to get into an LLM as a cited source. But, you know, as we see from the data, the clicks aren't really there. And the classic tactics all still work. You know, you want to be visible in AI overviews, you got to do your SEO properly. It's as simple as that. And that's a dead horse I'm not particularly going to be beating today. The question is, of course, what's the impact on traffic, both for news websites and general websites? Google says there's no direct impact, although they are a bit clever in how they phrase it, because they basically say total organic click volume from Google search websites has been relatively stable and click quality has increased, yada, yada, yada. They also say that any third-party studies that show otherwise are based on flawed methodologies, isolated examples, or traffic changes that occurred prior to the rollout of AI features. So basically they're saying, what are you talking about? AI overviews don't lose you any traffic. No, it's all fine. It's great. We're just going to send you more traffic and it's going to be better traffic. And all those third-party studies, they're wrong. You know, third-party studies like this one from SimilarWeb that shows the amount of zero-click searches going up quite spectacularly since the introduction of AI overviews. Or this particular study from ANSIF that shows the click-through rate on non-branded queries go down quite a lot after AI overviews have launched. Or this one from Ahrefs, which shows an average reduction of 34.5% in clicks after AI overviews were introduced. Or this particular study from data from Authoritas published by Press Gazette, which show a significantly lower click-through rates on pages that show an AI overview. Or this one from Pew Research, which, guess what, shows the exact fucking same thing. So yeah, Google is trying to gaslight us, basically. AI overviews cost us traffic. It's as simple as that. Users do not click from AI overviews to cited sources as often as they click from a classic list of 10 blue links, which makes perfect sense because, again, AI overviews provide the answer, more or less, provided they're not hallucinating, directly in the search results. So why would you want to click through to a cited source unless you're not entirely sure that the answer is correct? So for users, AI overviews are very good, they're very useful, and they don't necessarily need users to click through to the cited source. So of course they cost you traffic. And no matter what Google says, it's just the reality we live in, and we see that everywhere all over the world. In fact, we have Google Search Console data showing this exact same thing. The famous crocodile graphs where, you know, we see the impressions go up or stable because we get cited as a source, which is an impression, but we don't get the clicks. People don't click. As simple as that. So yeah, they're being deliberately deceptive, but you know, they hold all the cards really, and there's not an awful lot we can do about that. So yeah, AI overviews cost us a bit of traffic. However, it can vary quite a lot depending on the context of the AI overview. The data I've seen from Search Console profiles from a lot of my publishing clients is sometimes fairly minimal, especially if it's a very news-focused publishing client. That shows maybe a small decrease in traffic to some publishers that focus more on not necessarily hard news topics, but more maybe on entertainment news, celebrity news, or just lifestyle stories, which aren't really classified as news as such. They get a lot bigger hits from AI overviews. They lose a lot more traffic, basically. The good news is that AI does seem to generate more search queries on Google. We see a correlation, this is on 23 to 24, with usage of AI and usage of Google. And I think a lot of other people think, have jumped to this conclusion, that heavy use of AI chatbots like ChatGPT encourages people to use Google more to double check what the chat bot has been telling them. So we might see a bit of an offset of the loss of traffic by increased search volumes. However, I think the loss of traffic is still very clear and very measurable for most websites out there. This continues in 2025. The latest earnings call, Sundar Pichai said that AI overviews drive meaningful query growth. So, hey, more queries, more searches, and incremental total query growth for search. So Google's still growing as a search engine. However, that I do strongly believe, and this is sort of reflected in the way that Google themselves talk about this, that Google doesn't send as much clicks as a percentage of the total search volume to the wider web. So, AI overviews and news. Top stories still win. News does have a shorter shelf life. You got a smaller window of opportunity for news stories if you're targeting top stories, because at some stage you're going to be replaced by an AI overview. Evergreen content, you just lose. You know, most evergreen search queries will have an AI overview at the top. Google traffic in general is down, and for most news publishers, if they're just maintaining traffic, they're probably winning. Having said that, it is still by far the largest single traffic source for any news website out there. And if you want to jump on the AI bandwagon and stop investing in AI, I'm pretty sure that all your competitors are going to be absolutely delighted by that, because you're just making it easier for them to steal your clicks away from you. You have to invest in SEO. You have to keep investing in the channels. Yes, it's going to be harder to get the traffic, but you know, ignoring it is not going to save you. You got to just work harder at it. Now I want to talk about AI mode. AI mode is an interesting one, of course. We get clicks, dive deeper into AI mode directly from an AI overview now. Google is actively encouraging us to use AI mode. You go to that, you get an interesting summary page, which is, you know, I'm an AI skeptic. I think nobody will be surprised by that. I sometimes do go to AI mode because it does give me useful information, especially if it's more of a detailed question where I know to get all the answers I need, I might have to visit multiple websites. And in AI mode, I don't have to do that. I don't have to engage with multiple websites, click away their cookie consent forms, tolerate their email newsletter overlays, and get bombarded by irrelevant ads. AI mode will just give me all that same information without any of the friction of having to engage with websites. And I'm saying this as an AI skeptic, you know. More importantly, AI mode is not immune for news. This is an interesting one, a Ukraine peace deal. Of course, you get a top stories box on classic search. You click on the AI mode tab, you get a summary of everything related to the news there. So you can use AI mode to get the latest news. You don't need to engage with news websites. Again, like with AI overviews, AI mode will show cited sources, in this case, news websites there. And the question then is, do people actually click on those sources? And the answer is just no, they don't. There was an interesting, fairly small sample size study done not too long ago by Kevin Indig from Growth Memo. But I do find the data interesting because it sort of correlates with what I'm seeing myself. People just don't click. They just don't click. When you're in AI mode, you tend to stay in AI mode. You don't need to click to websites. And that's also partially because the AI mode answers are good. I think they're better than AI overviews, less prone to hallucinations. And I think that's because they tend to summarize what they scrape off the web rather than auto-generate an answer and then try to ground it. And you can just ask it follow-up questions and stay in AI mode. So the outbound clicks generally are just very, very low. And if there is an outbound click, it tends to be a commercially incentivized click that somebody wants to buy something, which of course is not relevant for news websites. News websites just don't get any clicks. Widely available as well since October in pretty much the same countries that AI overviews are active. News, like I said, is not excluded. The good news is that adoption rates are fairly low. 75 million daily users is what Google's giving us, but that means it's a very tiny percentage of the 2 billion daily users that Google sees. Google is trying to encourage users to use AI mode with that dive deeper in AI mode button under an AI overview, and also by making it a prominent feature on the standard google.com landing page. However, if you press the enter button and you type in a search, which most people will do, you get the classic search result. So they're not making it the default search just yet. And in fact, I don't think they will, but that's a different rant, which I will not go into too much today. I think it's too risky for Google to make AI mode the default at this stage of the AI wars. And then we have the web guides. This is quite an interesting one where they cluster a search result into different aspects of the search. So you're basically combining all the best of AI overviews in AI mode and classic search in one search result. Cluster of articles will be organized by subtopics. You get a short summary at the top of each cluster, followed by classic blue links. And they don't seem to trigger when there's a top stories box. I have not been able to get a web guide search result for news items. Which I think is quite interesting as well. I had an example not too long ago where I did a query where I wanted to know why Graham Rowntree left Munster Rugby. He was a rugby coach. Munster Rugby is one of the four Irish provincial rugby teams. And last season, Graham Rowntree suddenly departed mid-season as head coach, despite the fact he had a pretty successful season so far. And then I got a web guide search result on my mobile. So of course, as typical SEO, I immediately took a screenshot of that. So you get the quick matches at the top, which is classic search, and then you can expand that to get more classic search result. And below that, you got the web guide search result, which are just different sub-questions, basically. Like you had the official statements, the analysis, the fan reaction, and all of those, with a few cited links which you could expand individually to get more source links. And as a user, I found this quite useful. However, at the same time, I also found myself less inclined to click through to sources as I would have been in a classic search result, because a lot of it was already captured in the summaries. But if I wanted to deeper dive into, for example, what the fans thought about the coach leaving, I could go to sources quite easily. So I found this quite an elegant solution. I found it a nice little middle ground of AI and classic search. And officially, it's still an experiment. However, unofficially, like I said, I've been seeing these, and I'm using an iPhone and Safari, and I've been seeing these pop up quite regularly in Google searches that I do on my mobile. Because it's still officially a labs feature, we don't really know what the traffic impact is, but I don't expect it to have as big of an impact as AI overviews or AI mode. I do think there will be some impact because, like I said, the summaries are quite good at providing details that you might be the only thing that you need, so you don't necessarily need to click through. But it does seem to be formatted in a way that the summaries are quite short, and if you want to read the detailed stuff, you will need to go to those web pages. So I think, it's a nice integration. I suspect this might be very similar to what the new default search is going to be like in the near future. I think both Google is happy with this because it still allows for accurate advertising targeting and providing links to web publishers and search results so that they can get the regulators off their back. While still being seen to be, using AI in their search results. And I think users quite like it. Me as, again, the AI skeptic user, I quite liked it. So I was quite happy with the web guide results. And from a user point of view, I was really pleased with the kind of experience that it gives me. Google has a complete documentation, of course, on AI features on your website. So keep an eye on that for the latest developments. In a nutshell, we are seeing a replacement of classic search with AI-enabled search features. AI overviews are an evolution, basically featured snippets on steroids. If you're a hard news publisher, you're pretty safe. But your peripheral content that is not necessarily hard news will suffer from AI overviews. You can, circumvent that by building direct brand loyalty if you can, and there are ways to increase your citation probability. AI mode is potentially a real traffic killer. I don't think Google wants to kill the open web. I genuinely don't think they want to. So that's also why I don't think they're going to roll out AI mode as a default experience, because if they do that, they would kill the open web. They just would. And I don't think it's in Google's best interest to do that. Web guide is the nice middle ground. I see that sort of as the future of search. where we will get that nice middle ground of having AI be part of the search result while still offering very clear links to sources presented in such a way that users can very easily find exactly the kind of information that they're looking for. And it would mean slightly less powerful impact on traffic as well. So, surviving the AI first era, which we're now arriving into, for news publishers, it's very much against, trying to immunize yourself against whatever the tech giants are up to. And that means you have to have loyal audiences that go directly to you as a website, that circumvent the platforms or type your brand name in the platform, in which case they don't have a choice but to show your website. And it also means you have to understand what your audience wants from you. So talk to your audience. That's one of those scary things. A good friend of mine, Andy Jarvis, he runs a marketing consultancy here in Northern Ireland. He takes on global clients. His mantra is talk to your customers. And I don't think enough websites, enough businesses do that. They don't talk enough to their customers, or they just broadcast to their customers and don't listen to what their customers have to say. And I think, if you want to survive, you need to understand what your customers want from you, and that means listening to your customers. Multimodal content, of course, it's not just about classic articles, text articles anymore. News hasn't been about that for a very long time. So get your videos out there, get your podcasts out there, get your newsletters out there, do whatever your audience wants you to do when it comes to formatting your news in the way that they like to consume it. And yes, brand awareness, brand power. If you are a commodity publisher, as in your target audience wouldn't necessarily miss you if you were gone, because they can just go to another website, you're going to have a bad time in the near future. I'll give an example. I work with several Formula One news websites, and some of these I have to actively look at their logo to remind myself which of my client websites I'm actually on, because they look similar, they have similar content, they have similar stories, and there's nothing really that sets them apart. If half those Formula One news websites were to disappear tomorrow, nobody would really care, aside maybe the people who work for them. And the audience who wants to read that content, they'll be fine. They're just going to read a different website. They don't have sufficiently distinctive features, or if they have distinctive features, they're not emphasizing them enough. They're not showcasing them enough. You have to showcase what makes you unique, what makes you different, and use that to try and build that loyal audience and bind your readers to you. Don't be a commodity publisher that just writes what everybody else is writing, because you're probably going to disappear in the next 2 to 5 years. I have a newsletter where I very occasionally blather about this stuff. I write maybe once every 6 to 8 weeks. So if you want to stroke my ego and subscribe, I would be very grateful. And that is all that I have. I wonder if you have any questions, or if this rant was sufficient to get people to shut up.
Barry, so I took from this entire presentation that you firmly believe that Google's right in the increasing queries and increasing traffic to websites, right? That's what I took from this.
No.
It's always great to be able to see and see your picture and your viewpoint of news publishers. There's a number of strategies that news publishers are not adopting yet, and we've talked about this on our show a number of different times. I want to throw a couple things. You slammed AI overviews for quoting out-of-date stats like English speaker examples. For newsrooms, what practical rules would you add around date stamps or data sourcing or corrections so LLMs stop latching onto stale and decontextualized numbers?
You can't prevent LLMs from doing that. They will make stuff up if they don't know the direct answer. And if you provide them with the answer, then they're just going to show it and not send you any traffic. And for publishers that are focused on acquiring traffic, why would you want to do that? I'm a bit amused sometimes at the rush that the SEO industry has to optimize for AI search. I'm like, why the fuck would you? It's not going to earn you traffic. Just you're helping the LLMs becoming more accurate and becoming much better at providing answers. People don't click on those cited sources nearly as much as maybe you want them to. And yes, we'll talk about this top of funnel stuff and brand awareness, all of that. Great. What's the ROI on that? How do you measure that? And people are proclaiming the death of search and the death of SEO. Like, oh no, it's all about LLMs, all about AI. Oh, I'm sorry, but when I look at my traffic graphs for my clients, that's a load of fucking bullshit. Google's still winning.
0.2%.
Yeah, exactly. Google is still winning by a significant margin. So please just keep investing in classic SEO.
Absolutely. Well, you did say AI isn't the root cause of the crisis. It just accelerates weak strategies, right?
Absolutely. I think a lot of publishers have to be honest with themselves and look at the data and say, yeah, Google traffic has been on the decline for a while, and that is not necessarily Google's fault. I do think Google is part of the blame, but part of it is just publishers have been chasing after the cheap clicks for too long, and again, not doing those things that I talked about here, not building those loyal audiences, not emphasizing the unique USP as a brand, and AI just hastened that decline, and everybody's panicking now. I'm like, yeah, you should have been changing course 10 years ago. And if you're only doing it now because you feel the AI heat, you've been having your head in the sand for too long now.
One of our listeners here it says it's just because the bosses are obsessed with AI search. It does impact destination. It does, and we've talked about it. Is that the AI mode? That's your news feed, and you don't have to go to the destination, right?
Yeah.
So
the interesting thing about AI mode, though, Erin, is users generally don't like it. It tends to be one of those cases where people dip in, and very few people stay there. They just go back to classic search. Users don't really want AI mode, which is again one of the reasons why I don't think Google wants to make it the default experience.
Well, just wait until they plaster all the ads around there, then they'll be fine, right? Well, is there a kind of a non-traffic KPI that you'd hardwire into editorial planning so leadership doesn't just stare at page views? I mean, we talk about brand awareness, we talk about visibility. I think there is something to be able to track news items in the AI mode because that's a venue that they're going to be affecting, right? Whether or not they've got the traffic itself. So what are we talking about when it comes down to that non-traffic KPI?
Yeah, I mean, this has always been a tough one because this is the case for all of the surfaces that Google has, be that classic search, AI mode, even image search, the news tab. It's about impressions versus clicks, of course, because most publishers still care about the clicks. But what I find as an interesting corollary to that is can you measure impressions in an AI system like AI mode, and then look at brand searches off the back of that? Does it increase brand awareness, which then can be reflected in brand searches and direct visits to your website? And it's interesting to build models around that to see if increased citation in AI answers does actually lead to more brand traffic, either direct traffic or brand search. I think that's an interesting and maybe try and solve, because that is really the only way where we can see a positive impact from a citation in an AI answer.
Yeah. And that's still brand search is at least impressions on the site, right? And that growth. But you also have to have all players on the team communicating and coordinating, because if something goes off in rogue and starts creating some structure that is affecting AI and analytics is not trained or the models aren't prepared for that, then it's you have to be uniform and you have to be focused inside the organization. A couple questions from the audience here, Barry. From everything you're seeing, when does traditional news SEO still beat AI-driven answers in 2026? And when does it just not stand a chance? That's from Ryan Cooper.
Yeah, good question. Basically, classic news SEO wins in the moment of urgency, in the moment of news creation, when it is a fresh story, because there's no way the AI can provide you with an answer at that particular instant. So you need to be fairly quick with your story, get it out there fairly quickly, make sure it's optimized as much as can, and do follow-up stories. Keep that story alive, keep the top stories box alive. That's your winning opportunity. And like I said in the slides, you have a smaller window of opportunity now. Previously, you had maybe 2 days in top stories, and now I think it's maybe 6 to 8 hours. So it's a smaller window of opportunity, so you got to maximize it. But that is still when you win. The moment it becomes a longer, older story, and news 4 hours is old, you have a higher risk of losing out to AI-generated answers, because they catch up quickly now, and they can provide summaries very, very quickly.
Another question from Mark Scott. How does Barry see news publishers diversifying away from traditional web traffic? What are the next battlegrounds for publishers?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure myself yet. It really depends on how news consumption will change in the next several years, and even if it will change. And news, people don't stop reading the news. I mean, news fatigue is a real thing, but generally we like reading the news. We like to stay up to date. It's just how we consume the news that might change. I find my own habits changing a little bit, where I find myself reading less content on the web and actually turning on the radio or doing like one of those quick news catch-up podcasts that go out 2 or 3 times a day, and just listen to that when I'm driving or something like that.
And that's a perfect example of multimodal, where the publisher actually moves to the consumer's preference as opposed to just staying in the web content and the top stories, right?
Exactly. And I think also as a publisher, if you have an audience that's very visually focused, for example, a young audience that likes to spend time on TikTok and YouTube, maybe do like short form videos, like a 30-second video on a particular story that you then publish on TikTok. And there's different ways you can monetize that sort of stuff as well, with maybe some sponsorship logos or ads or something. So it doesn't have to be just giving away the news for free. But yeah, publishers are ironically generally very slow to change, despite the fact that the news industry is very fast moving. As organizations, news publishers generally change very slowly. And they're like trying to get an oil tanker to change course, but they will need to, because user behaviors are changing and we need to follow that. Having said that, if you're a publisher who's not in a moment of critical failure, as in you're okay, you maybe not where you want to be, but you're okay, you don't necessarily need to change rapidly. Becoming a first adopter is very rarely the best strategy. It's better sometimes to just wait and see how is this going to pan out, what is the user and the consumer going to do, see who else is doing that, and let them make their mistakes, and then try to follow in their footsteps without making those same mistakes.
Very good. I got one last comment, because I know we've had these conversations before. You've been blunt with a lot of publishers blaming AI while shipping, quote unquote, shitty websites with shitty experiences. What's one UX or ad load threshold? And we've had these discussions offline, where you'd tell a publisher, fix this before you ever think about AI mode strategy, because user experience data will sink you either way. Are there any thresholds that you can share with our audience right now?
I had an interesting one recently where it was an Australian website, and I loaded it on desktop without my ad blocker because I want to see what the experience is like. And there were so many ads and so many overlays and pop-ups, I couldn't actually see the headline. There was no content for me visually on that first viewport. And I'm like, what are we doing here, people? What are you doing? I mean, there's an official standard, which is about 20% ad density. I think it's actually 30% ad density, where some advertising bureaus draw the line. I think that's way too much. I think that 30%, even 20% is way too much. If 20% of your viewport is advertising, you fucked up somewhere along the way. The challenge is to make ads integral to your content in such a way that it doesn't interrupt people engaging with your content. And that is something actually you need good user experience designers for. And if you do that, the actual percentage of advertising becomes almost entirely irrelevant, because they just feel natural to the website. And that's why I think programmatic advertising is probably one of the key problems here, because you have no control over what the ad shows and how it is displayed, and the website just.
And we're having render blocking issues all the time.
Yeah. And I think if you're a publisher, if you're a big publisher, you can build direct relationships with advertisers, and you definitely should. If you're a smaller publisher, you need to band together with other smaller publishers to form a sort of inventory block, and then get better deals from advertisers, because you cannot rely on programmatic to save the day. It's just going to ruin your website no matter how you integrate it.
Yep. All right. I think we've filled out the swear quota for the conference today. So
sorry about that.
No. Always counting you, man. Thanks so much, Barry, and a great presentation. And we'll follow up with you soon, man. All right. Hey, want to make sure that you are aware of a number of different causes that SE Ranking is standing behind. Charity organizations such as U Animals. Since the beginning of the full-scale war in Ukraine, U Animals has been actively helping animals within war zones, providing evacuation assistance and supplying feed and medicines to shelters. QR code to find out more about that organization, as well as the Children of Heroes charity fund that supports children who have lost parents during the full-scale Russian invasion in Ukraine. The organization helps rebuild housing for children who have lost their homes. Please have a look at both of these organizations, and the links will be in the chat as well. If you can donate or if you can help, please follow those links and find out more about those organizations. All right, next up, we've got social's sneaky role in what AI decides to show from Andreea Stefan. Good afternoon, evening, and morning, Andreea. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm good. Excited to be here.
Very good to meet you. I'm going to introduce you to everybody who's watching here. She's the SEO lead at Planable. She's a seasoned SEO lead over there, and she brings years of hands-on experience in crafting SEO strategies, building and scaling SEO teams, and driving organic growth through smart, user-first content practices. She's known for deep technical understanding and results-driven mindset. She combines analytical rigor along with approachable communication, making SEO not just effective, but clear and actionable. Andreea blends her strategic vision with a genuine down-to-earth style, guiding teams to deliver strong visibility and long-term content growth. It's very nice to meet you, Andreea. The floor is yours. Go ahead and present.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so my talk today is going to be about the sneaky role that social media platforms play in what AIs decide to show. And on the agenda today, I'm gonna answer some questions about how AIs discover and index social media content, how they rank and retrieve it. Gonna talk about the impact of engagement and virality on social media posts and AI visibility, and finally how we can measure and prove that impact. And we're gonna go over the new type of collaboration that's becoming more and more important between two teams, social and SEO. And I'm gonna show you the actual workflow that we have implemented this quarter at Planable. So nothing groundbreaking here, but just a quick refresher that over a decade ago, when I actually started in SEO, Google was pretty much synonymous with search, right? If you had that nailed down, if you ranked well in Google, you were golden. But fast forward to today, search has really fragmented. And users are no longer just going to the traditional search engine. They're going to social media platforms to search for their queries. And they're also not any longer restricted to like 4 or 5 carefully selected words to describe their issue. They actually now have the whole entire space of chatbots at their disposal to cram pain points and particular criteria and specifics in their prompts. And they can rest assured that every time chatbots are gonna, answer super thoroughly. And more than that, they're just gonna prompt another question to keep users in the chatbot and engaged and hooked, which can easily lead to like 0 clicks for websites. If we look at the latest SE ranking data about how users are finding websites nowadays, we can get an idea about how organic traffic is faring. It's still getting the lion's share, sitting comfortably at 47%, but we are seeing a downward trend for it. From the beginning of the year till now, it's lost almost 4%. So it's definitely sliding, and we can only guess in whose favor. But yeah, social media traffic is at around 10%, which means that 1 in 10 people are arriving on our sites from a social media platform. And it's starting to be more than just traffic with social media, right? It's about influence. It's about creating content and delivering it where users are consuming this type of content. And it's also about shaping LLM's perception of the brand, the company, or the product. And finally, AI traffic doesn't seem to have a huge share, but don't let that small percentage fool you, because we are seeing this share of traffic rocketing, and I think it's gonna surprise all of us when it's just gonna keep doubling over the following months. So we looked at organic search results, and again, no surprise here, but Google is surfacing more and more social media platforms in its SERPs. Actually, 50% of results now feature at least one social media platform. And that includes, the usual suspects, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook. SE Ranking actually discovered that in top 10 results from Google, actually 37% of the times Reddit will be mentioned, and it's closely followed by YouTube, which has a 20% share, and then followed by Quora with 8%. So this is the proof that we're all looking for. Social media platforms are super present in SERPs. They are being surfaced by Google because they know that this is exactly what the users are kind of pivoting towards. They want that authenticity that comes from social media. They want to hear from peers, and they want to learn from people who have come across the same pain points that they have. So we've looked at how social posts pop up in organic, but how are they showing up in AI? Research shows that in AI overviews, 20% of results include at least one social media platform, and that number is even higher in AI mode. 36% of queries will mention at least one social media platform. So the answer to this burning question, is AI learning from our social presence, is a resounding yes. AI models are training on everything that they can find on social media platforms, from the content that brands put out to the conversations, the discussions, the debates. And most importantly, they use this data to reach a consensus and to kind of determine the truth. So how exactly is AI learning from our social media presence? Where if in traditional SEO, we were so accustomed to keywords, now for AI visibility, they're replaced with brand mentions. So mentions on third-party sites are as important as keywords and backlinks for traditional SEO. It's the new vote of confidence. It's the new kind of seal of approval. Gathering and earning as many brand mentions as possible is kind of gonna assure your spot in AI visibility. And something that might seem trivial, but the trusted about us pages also play kind of a huge role in whether you show up in AIs and whether the information is accurate, because AIs really trust LinkedIn and Wikipedia. And these about us pages contain structured data that is pre-vetted. So if you forget about your LinkedIn page and you have outdated information there, that's what AI is going to pick up. And no matter what you say on your own site, you might appear in an AI summary with outdated data. And finally, AI loves to look at verified discussions. We all kind of figured out that they like to look at Reddit comments. They like to follow debate and see what the consensus is, to see what gets upvotes and what gets traction. So if we were to look at AI overviews and AI mode, we can see the big dominators here. We have YouTube, Reddit, and Quora taking up the most space in these results. And the dominators are not too different in ChatGPT. We know that it relies heavily on Reddit and Wikipedia. So when we're informing our strategy and when we're selecting what kind of platforms we should be focusing on to kind of establish this social presence and make sure that we're feeding AIs the right kind of information, it's worth taking into account AIOs and AI modes and ChatGPT's favorites, which seem to be like heavily relying on Reddit and YouTube. So another burning question: how do AI chatbots decide what to surface? There are two ways this kind of surfacing happens. Popular AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Perplexity actually don't have direct access to social media, but they do train on anything that's public, anything that's been shared and that was crawled and indexed. So first and foremost, the model bases the answers on the internal training data and serves a generalized answer. But if the AI chatbot has access to a web search tool, then it's going to perform this search, and it's going to rely on the traditional search engine's ranking algorithm to surface a result. It's not entirely clear now what kind of factors AI chatbots are taking into account. There's no public data on this, but we are seeing research that's indicating what we should be focusing on. And surprise, surprise, it starts with authority. Nothing groundbreaking here if you've been around in the SEO world. But yes, LLMs do care a lot about authority and the brand mentions that I was talking about earlier. It's more important now than ever to have third-party sites mentioning your brand, whether you're incentivizing that or you're actually doing it yourself, creating profiles and making sure that your company data is up to date. That's all gonna add up and kind of strengthen your entity and ensure that you're serving super accurate data to AIs. Another super important factor, topical match and depth. Actually, Barry was quoting Kevin Indig a bit earlier, so I'm gonna follow in his steps. He said something that really stuck with me, that this hyper selected content is now becoming as important as it is for users. It's now also essential for AI visibility. So really delving deep into your niche and like owning topics, doing deep dives and really providing that value to users. This has been said over and over again, but it's still holding true to this day. And it's something that LLM really care about. Like they need that expertise and those like super insightful first-hand secrets to surface in their AI chatbots. And finally, we're all gonna rejoice in hearing this, but traditional SEO still holds. The best practices that we've been using for years now are still important. And by that, I mean alt text and keywords and really optimizing for the user first and the search engine second. So what part of a post is most likely to be read? The foundation is the same both for readers and AI systems. First and foremost, they look at the title and the body text, because that's what contains the main story. That's what sets the context, and that's what that's the gist of the information. But when the post is audio or video, we do need to step in and help out with transcripts and captions. And we know YouTube does this automatically, but we can enhance captions with keywords and make sure that we're speaking our users' language. And finally, the support is the metadata. So the tags, the alt text. Alt text is super important for accessibility and image search, and it puts everything into context, and it makes sure that we provide a full picture for AI systems to really understand what the post is about, what other entities it's connected to, and where it would best serve an answer for the user. A question that I'm sure social media managers are dying to learn the answer to is, does AI understand visual posts? Yes, it does. Actually, as of this year, models like ChatGPT and Gemini, they use optical character recognition, and they have super high accuracy in reading text. So we can all rest assured that our memes are making LLMs laugh, not just our readers. But yes, we don't have to shy away from putting text in our images or taking a more funny approach, because AIs can look at the entire context. They kind of connect the dots between the caption, the description, everything surrounding the text in the image, to form a clear picture about what the post is, what you're trying to put across, and it's all just helping your wider strategy in delivering content that's actually helpful or funny or more educational. Is engagement a credibility factor? Kind of like backlinks for SEO. As of now, there's no solid proof to indicate that if a post goes viral, it's gonna automatically do well in AIs. I wouldn't be surprised if upvotes, likes do have a small significance there, but in the absence of any hard proof, I do like to go straight to the source, and in this case I went to Google Search Central blog, where they say that you don't have to do anything special to rank in their AI results. And it looks like a lot of the fundamentals that we're used to are still holding true. We still need to focus on delivering value and kind of putting the user first, and we still need to evolve at the same time with our users. And now for the measurement and proving the value that all of this effort we're putting into our social media presence is paying off. At Planable, we like to use SE Visible. I love it because I can see everything at a glance. It's very easy to have your visibility score at your fingertips, to see week over week how your average position is trending. And another super useful feature is the competitive analysis that you can run. You can see how you stack up against your competitors, and you can check, what kind of resources they're investing in specific assets or content in order to improve their visibility. Okay, so it's all shaping up to indicate that the SEO team and the social team should work hand in hand. And historically, these two teams have cared about pretty different things, but there is common ground. There is, we found that on ourselves at Planable, that both teams do care about authority, brand mentions, and entity. And starting from this common ground, we were able to kind of put together a workflow, especially after hearing from other social media managers that we've collaborated with, that this kind of like overlap is becoming more and more important, not just for the users, to have that continuity and that kind of consistency across platforms, but also in this new era of AI visibility. So this quarter, we've really focused on this close collaboration, and we stopped working in silos. So I'm going to quickly walk you through the 3-step plan that we implemented at Planable. And not shockingly, it started with the planning phase. Basically, we like to start our quarters with syncs, and these are usually made depending on your team. But we went cross-team this time, and we aligned keyword research with social trends. We established a common keyword database, and we mapped out, the topics by platforms and funnels. And the result of all this planning was a unified calendar where we could see both the blogs and the social campaigns. Second, the execution velocity. We started working very closely together, the SEO and the social teams, and we paired long-form guides with social assets. We started really optimizing social media posts, finding, very unobtrusive keywords that we can naturally sprinkle in bios, captions, and transcripts. And I think most importantly, we didn't try to overdo it. We listened to our social media managers' suggestions and recommendations, and we trusted his experience in recommending the best formats. And finally, my favorite step, the feedback and measurement loop. We didn't want to do like a single meeting and then forget about the whole plan by the end of the quarter. So we made sure we actually did those bi-weekly check-ins. In the team, I'm known that I'm not the biggest fan of meetings. So this can be check-ins, can be just a 5-minute check-in or a half an hour chat, depending on any new results or anything that's happening in the space. But I've seen that it's super important to share quick wins and have this two-way feedback session, because a lot of the times we find that there's a lot of information in the social team that we were not aware of, trends, comments that gain a lot of traction, very, very serious and important topics that might not have search volume, in our tools, but are gaining a lot of momentum on social media platforms. So these are the best times to identify these kind of hidden gems and act on them. And of course, something that was really helpful was having these shared KPIs. From the beginning of the planning session, we knew that we were all pulling in the same direction, focusing on referral traffic and focusing on boosting branded search volume. And yes, this is the three-step plan that has shaped our last few months. And if there's a takeaway I can share with you, and like a final actionable step would be to reach out to your social media manager and ask them to set up a meeting and start talking about any topics that they're seeing across social media, how those are correlating with the keyword research that you're doing, and how you can start this collaboration, how you can break down the silo and actually ensure that AI visibility is kind of taken care of and nurtured from the start, with both what's happening on the blog side, but also what's happening on social media platforms. And if there are any questions, happy to answer those.
Pardon me. Excellent presentation. I truly appreciate the insight for social and how it's applying to AI and what we're needing to really adopt and get the teams together. I want to go to Andreea. I want to go to a couple questions from the audience, if I could. From Clara Bennett, how can social teams create content that's more AI friendly without turning posts into SEO blogs?
Yeah, so we actually had this question in our brainstorming session. And the best approach here is to kind of stay away from trying to over-optimize, over-engineer, overthink. And when you get your social media manager involved, hopefully they're gonna rein in all the optimizations that us SEOs are really eager to do. So you do need to have these two people from the two different teams, with kind of different interests, find that common ground, and they're each gonna advocate for their own platforms and their own formats, because SEO up until now used to have the answer, and the social team would have the announcement, a blog post, and then sharing the news about it on social. I would say that has shifted, and now SEO should own the topic, and social media should the social media manager should own and decide on the best format and use their expertise to kind of advocate for the best format.
Excellent. Another question from Olivia SEO Carter. If we turn social posts into full documentation for AIs to scrape, won't that risk cannibalizing our own website traffic? If the AI gives the whole answer, why would anybody still click through?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. That's going to happen whether we help AIs or not. So why not get ahead of that and actually own the narrative, make sure that the data is accurate, make sure that all the product features are displayed, everything is up to date, nothing is misrepresented, and stay ahead of your competitors. Because if you're not taking advantage of this, then you're just basically you're just handing your competitors this opportunity, and you might not like the results.
The conversation is still happening with or without you, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Andreea, thank you so much for your presentation, your time today. We're going to have to switch into our next topic here. So thank you so much for everything. Making sure that our audience also is aware of SE ranking community. Check out this link in the chat, as well as this QR code. It's a community inside of SE Ranking where you can test new tools before the official release. You can also ask their team members questions about the tools and functionality. You can also enter into giveaways to win swag, and we all love swag, right? And along with that, chat with like-minded people in the community. So you got to check that out. It's a great community to be part of. All right. Next on deck, our last round here. We have a debate, budgeting for multi-engine search. Where should your next $10,000 go? All right, folks, we have a lively debate planned here today. I want to introduce everybody that we've got on the panel here. We got Barry Schwartz, the president of Rusty Brick, as well as owner and publisher of Search Engine Roundtable. We've got Melissa Popp, VP of Content Strategy and Innovation at Rickety Roo. We also have Grace Frohlich, AI SEO Senior Manager over at Brain Labs, and yours truly, CEO over at Site Strategics, Edge Media Studios, as well as host of Edge of the Web Radio. Everybody, thanks for joining us in this final stage of our online conference, and it's going to be a fun debate, right?
Yeah.
I disagree.
I completely disagree.
Okay, Barry.
Start the debate early.
I'm going to have to argue there. All right, so here's our quandary here, right? We're going into 2026. There's certainly strategies that we're going to have to adopt. We're certainly seeing the AI environment that we're in, and we're looking at what do we do with our investment in our efforts, right? Going into either an agency or we're working on behalf of clients. There's a lot to be done and some choices to be made. So first and foremost, and I'm going to toss two individuals in the lineup here and give everybody a chance to be able to jump in there. So studies have shown big CTR drops when AI overviews, AI modes show up. Some analyses cite close to 61% organic click-through decline on information queries. So in 2026, what replaces get the click as the North Star? Is it a mention, link presence in AI answers, brand lift, or something else? I'm going to go to Barry first because I want to hear his stance there.
So what replaces it? Yeah, I mean, so everybody in the SEO space is basically saying, even the Google and Bing space, like if you work for those companies, impressions, mentions, brand mentions, all of that replaces the actual click, which is kind of upsetting. We're going back to like newspaper advertising or radio ads or billboards. Like these are the amount of people that potentially could buy it and potentially see your stuff, but we don't know if they're actually calling you or if they're clicking on you from that paper ad because there's no way to track it. So that's what we're kind of going back to, is those brand mentions and impressions that you might get from it, which is sad.
It's almost the billboard of sorts nowadays. Melissa, what are your thoughts there?
I thought I was going to disagree with Barry right off the bat, but no, I agree with I agree exactly. Brand mentions have always been important even before we saw AI overviews and the rise of LLMs. A lot of brands kind of slept on focusing on that instead of focusing on other areas of marketing to drive organic to their websites, right? So I think brand just becomes so important. I know Morty Oberstein's cheering me on right now saying that, but yeah, brand mentions and impressions are just going to become so much more important and so much more clarifying as we report to our clients and in-house.
And the measurement tools to be able to see that brand visibility as well. Grace, I'll toss it to you. What are your thoughts about this?
Thanks, Erin. I am leaning more towards what Melissa said. But I also want to make it known that I don't like that concept of North Star metrics. I don't think we, as SEOs, should only look at traffic. Just even before AI search, it's very narrow, like a narrow scope of how you should view your data. I think it makes more sense to view multiple metrics, look at your data from all different views. So yeah, that's why I kind of lean towards, well, you can look at traffic, but you should also look at other things. Specifically for AI search, what we're doing at Brain Labs is we're looking at AI visibility share of voice. For an example, how
Mhm.
often is our client's brand showing up in AI overviews? Not just like referral traffic from there, but actually like you said, brand mentions. We also look at conversions, revenue. I mean, we should always be doing that anyway for organic, but it's even more important now than ever to keep a closer eye on conversions and use that as, I guess, if you want to say North Star, you can say it, but a portion of the whole, really.
It's really conventionally speaking, we should be harkening back to those 12 points of contact with a consumer before they actually become a customer, right? And where would they see us? And I mean, that's why in retail marketing, you've got brand right there at the traffic flow of the entryway of a store that you're coming into. Brand placement is incredibly important, and not to harken back to days of the Mad Men, right? But this is still our space where we have to position the brand on the intent funnel, and we should never be wholly focused on the traffic as that North Star. Completely agree with you. All right, so yeah, positing the hypothesis here. Okay, here's the example. Assume I hand you $10,000 for multi-engine visibility. How would you divide it across Google's AI mode optimization, classic SEO, digital PR, citations, and social discovery, creator work like TikTok or short form that seeds signals? What would be your balance of investment there, and why that mix in 2026, if that is the mix? So I'll go to Grace first.
You're assuming that, I think you're assuming a lot of things. That these sit within different channels or different
Right.
teams.
Right.
So I guess with that assumption, I mean, obviously being an SEO, like I'm gonna say majority of that should go to SEO, right? It's not, I'm biased.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. You just pull the entire budget over. All right.
yeah, it's like give it all to us. We know what to do with it. So I would say definitely majority of that should go to SEO still. We've
Mhm.
seen from today's presentations, everyone has been talking about, yeah, SEO still matters. It's not dead. Specifically technical SEO, content, those kind of things. So, making my case, the majority should still go to SEO. But with AI in mind as well, AI search is not its separate channel, at least not yet. It's really been
It's a synthesis, right?
yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, well, I guess the SEO team should handle AI as well. So we're happy to do that. Definitely.
Okay,
Um,
so Grace put all the chips on SEO.
yeah, yeah. I mean, not saying that social and, other channels don't matter, but again, like I'm biased. Like I think the majority should go to SEO.
Roger that. Melissa, what about your thoughts around where you should stack the chips on the roulette board?
Well, this isn't going to surprise anybody, and least of all Grace. I think your majority of your budget is still going to go into your content creation. I've said it 100 times this year that I believe AI mode, LLMs, whatever answer engine that you're looking at is going to become our new top of the funnel. And the most important part of being seen at the top of the funnel when people aren't ready to click, buy, whatever you're trying to get them to do, is to remember who you are with a strong brand presence, building trust right from the get-go. And whether that happens with an AI overview that pops up or you surfacing in an LLM, investing in content that is going to be seen in these different places, not just organically, not just on social, not anywhere else you might be pushing it out, to me is still the most important and often still the most neglected part of our marketing, regardless of channel that you're going all in on. Trust me, I'm a big fan of SEO, and like Grace, I believe right now, this is an evolution and a synthesis oh my gosh, I cannot say that word today. Y'all know what I mean though.
Yep.
Of what we're already doing with SEO and evolving that, right? So to me, it starts with content, having high quality content that's answering questions right to the point, building that trust. That's still where all my chips fall when it comes to budget allocation.
All right, Barry, we know that you proclaim not to be a SEO, you just play one on TV, right?
I write a lot of content, so I'm going to take the content play. Just give me your money. Not that I write content for other people, but I'll take your money, and you could like sponsor my videos and do YouTube stuff. You could diversify and not put all your money into one place like SEO or email marketing or GEO or display ads and so forth. Put it into everything. Wherever your content you create, it shouldn't just go one place. It should go everywhere, especially this podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I'll take a swing at this as well. I'm really leaning into the multimodal. I'm really leaning into the video content, short form content, illustrative content that answers a question or a very small series of questions, and getting that into the carousels, getting that into, because we're seeing these videos come up in the AI overview more and more, right? But I'm also going to put my chips on the user experience improvements of a website. If I had the budget to be able to really focus on what we're doing with the consumer when they're coming in, because if we didn't have that focus before, it's incredibly important to make sure that we know who they are, what they're looking for, and be able to adjust that user experience accordingly. If I was to split that budget, SEO is still incredibly valuable, but if I'm going to push into something that I think is going to attract attention with that $10,000 budget, I'd stack it on video and user, but I'm also biased as well, as you can tell, right? So there's that. Another question here. AI mode's deep search can browse hundreds of sites and generate fully cited synthesis. Does that push you towards original data, methodologies, or entity-rich resources over volume publishing? And Barry, you hit volume publishing daily, right? What's a minimum asset to be a site-worthy asset? What do you guys think about this? Melissa first.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with everything I encourage clients to do. It's any sort of original research, original point of thought, story they can tell. Anything that's new, different, valuable should be added to every piece of content. I firmly believe no matter what type of content, whatever niche, you can find that value. Of course, depending on your brand, depending on your company, your assets you already have could be valuable and you're not using them. And that's something that you should be auditing, integrating, and figuring out how to use. But on the flip side, everyone has a story, everyone has a data point. They may not necessarily be thinking about it actively as they're looking at their marketing, but it's there, and it's part of our jobs is to dig and find that and leverage that. And so I think the more we can find ways to improve originality in content versus strictly just, old school, we have a list of 50 keywords, we need to write a piece of content for every single one of those keywords to rank. I think once we shift from that type of publishing to creating more original content, LLMs, Google, everybody is going to surface this more, and it's just going to be continue to be site worthy in these engines.
Very good. Grace, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree with Melissa.
Obviously.
Yeah, everything she says is brilliant. But I also want to add that I think we need to kind of change our messaging in terms of how we communicate that. I'm coming from the perspective of like agency, right? So, a lot of our clients care more about quantity. Historically, they have.
Right.
And it's really we're working towards like shifting that conversation to like, well, now with AI search, originality and point of view matter more. But I do think it's going to be a slow process for sure. Like anything, like people hate change. So it's going to be a slow transition, but I think that it's definitely worthwhile to do that.
I think it raises a really good point there, is that from an agency mindset, right? There's a lot of clients that won't dare to actually move into a new channel. They're reticent. They're gun shy of what it might require of them, right?
Yep.
To be able to create content in different areas, especially if you've got, mid to small size clients. Their budget is as important as everybody else's, and they don't have the dollars to be able to put to creator content to really move the needle, so to speak. So I think part of the budget is having to kind of lean into where they're comfortable, but also what's going to be the most valuable execution for what they can do if you're actually pulling it from the client itself. Barry, what are your thoughts about the methodologies here and creating citation worthy content?
So I disagree with everybody, just because why not? This is supposed to fight and debate. And if I was AI, I could just ask why I should disagree, and I'll just get you a response. But I also like
Perplexity
change.
running right here, so okay, gotcha. Go ahead.
I actually also like change, so I disagree with you on that. I'll just keep disagreeing. Anyway, I do think we're all doomed. I used to think that maybe the only way to compete with AI is really like being entertaining. But Sora launched, and that's pretty entertaining, even though it looks fake. But it'll get better. I don't think originality is enough, because I think the AI could come up with stuff as well at some point by unless you have your own data, fine. But what most of us do, so you have your own data, fine. You can't get that from other places unless you start using AI to process your data to come up with that originality, which is going to happen. So I think assuming the AI could poll your audience, like what's to stop an AI bot from posting on LinkedIn saying, what are your thoughts on this? And then so I think eventually AI could easily do what I do. I mean, John Mueller said this, or Gary said that, or this podcast said this, or Google blog post said that. I'm pretty much done, which is fine. I have enough gray hair, so it doesn't make a difference. But and I like change, so we'll see what happens. But I do think
you're the de facto Morty overseeing Wrangler now. AI will never be able to handle that. You realize that now.
I think
the torch has been passed to you.
I guess, but Morty's easy to wrangle. He's not, so that hard. You can tell him I said so. So I think even the dumbest AI bots can handle Morty, I think so.
All right, that's my new ringtone. Okay, continue your thought there, though.
I mean, I think it's going to be a big challenge. I don't think it's happening tomorrow. I think it's going to happen over time. I think we're in trouble. I don't know. I think we're in big trouble. So,
did we all have a round of this? I think so.
Yeah, but I want to interject.
Hit us.
I do want to interject. I see your point, Barry. It's a bit pessimistic for me, to be honest.
Have you met Barry before?
Well, in passing. But I think that's assuming that AI search isn't going to change at all, or like the regulations around AI search aren't going to change. But I think it will. And I think that, just like Lily said in her presentation today, it might work now, like spamming might work now, but it's not always going to work, probably. So I do think it's going to evolve, as AI search evolves, regulations around it will evolve. There'll be guardrails put up. Who knows what that's going to look like? But again, I'm taking the more optimistic view, I guess.
This is my disagreeing face. I mean, just historically, if you look at it, like we're in a similar situation we were when Google started to launch their Google News stuff and other features, where publishers were like, no, we don't. This is horrible. You're taking our content, using our snippets. Some governments tried, several governments tried to block it or and Google's like, all right, we'll take it down. And then those governments like, all right, after 6 months, we want to come back in. We were wrong. I don't think the government regulations will work. In the US, definitely it won't happen. I think in the EU, something will happen. And then Google will be like, no, fine, we won't take your content. That's up to you. I think Google's in such a strong space. I don't think it's right. I think they're obviously their monopoly. They rule the monopoly. but I think they're in such a position where they just, I hope there's regulation that pushes Google to feed the publishers, but I don't see that happening based on what has happened with original search, changes to search over the years. And I think what we're seeing now with AI overviews, AI mode, all that stuff is going to change. But I think the consumer, meaning the searcher, and no offense to people who are searchers here, are becoming lazier and lazier and lazier, and they just want to get the answers. And Google knows that's the future. And Google has to deliver on that, or else OpenAI will, or Perplexity. And if Google doesn't do that, no matter how many lawsuits they get, and they have so much money and cash sitting around, and they keep making more piles of cash all the time, they could pay for it. I don't think Perplexity can handle all the lawsuits. I think OpenAI can for a long period of time because they have tons and tons of venture capital. But I don't think Perplexity is at the same level as OpenAI, and nobody's at the same level as Google. Nobody has the cash that Google does, and the infrastructure, and the ad network, and all this other stuff. So I think Google ultimately will do whatever they think searchers want, even if it hurts the ecosystem, even though they know they need the ecosystem, but they need to win in this phase, or else somebody else will do it. That's my pessimistic view.
All right. I'm going to argue with you a little bit here on this, Barry, because I think one thing in particular that we're not accommodating for is the consumer and how they are going to be jaded with just an AI answer. Everything's getting polished so much that consumer pushback will happen that they just can't be fed these AI Pez pieces all the time without really looking at the authenticity and kind of pushing back. So possibly looking at different platforms where authenticity is going to be more valued, as opposed to the AI generated, synthesized, and homogenized answer could very well be a win for marketers long term.
I did preference that by saying the lazy searchers, and that's what people are becoming lazier and lazier, and they don't care. They just read it and believe it, and they move on. How many people have told you, I read this on an AI overview, or I read this in OpenAI, and you know that topic so well because it's your expert area? I'm like, that's completely wrong. I don't care. That's what it says. I'm going to go by it. And people are just like when they scroll through Instagram, they see some person post a video or something, and that's what they're going to go by, because that's the new world.
It's also in schools, and honestly, that's a whole nother discussion in its own right, because AI overviews are being used as citable sources in school papers, and what a terrible, terrible thing that is. All right, so anything else on that topic real quick? I got a couple more questions before we're off. Nope. All right, so here's a interesting concept here. Do we centralize budgets for SEO, digital PR, social content under one visibility team, or do we keep them separate? Grace, what do you think? You're just going to go all in on this deal, aren't you?
Oh man, what should I mean, ideally, yeah. And I'll explain why I think this way. So I helped pioneer at Brain Labs a framework called the Customer Journey Framework that basically takes a bunch of data and organizes it into one like customer journey for search. So what that journey looks like, it's not just about organic search or search on Google. It also includes search on like social platforms, and of course now we're evolving that into search for AI search into that customer journey. So with that in mind, I do think that it's going that direction, because once we need to understand like our customer's journey, right? Because as we know, their search behavior is changing. Like we've seen that from like just reading or looking online, or even like presentations from today. People are saying like search is changing, search behavior is changing. People don't just go on Google; they go, they do discovery on social, discover new brands on social, and or AI search on LLMs. It's non-linear. So I think understanding that means that yes, we should be looking at it actually from like overall visibility across the entire journey. I know it's very a lot. I threw a lot out.
So having a framework that all the different teams actually adhere to, but have their own siloed practices, right? Is what you're saying here?
So I don't. I mean, I'm saying it shouldn't be siloed because that journey is like continuous.
Sure.
But each channel feeds in at different points of that journey. I hope that
Okay.
clarifies it. So,
does. It does.
social, it's like beginning stages of the journey, like social discovery, brand discovery happens more on social, probably.
Mhm.
And then, people do their research on either AI search, LLMs, even Google, like they do that whole middle section of research there. And then bottom funnel, depending on what it is, like what the transaction is, it's going to be on Google. It's going to be, actually, I don't
Absolutely.
even know if AI search has bottom funnel transactions yet, but it might.
Probably more the consideration stage. I mean, there's a deep
Right.
dialogue that we can't see.
Yeah.
Melissa, what are your thoughts? Should we be in a department mindset or a visibility department?
I really think it comes down to what your budget is. A company
Yeah,
that spends $1
absolutely.
million a year on marketing is going to operate a lot differently than a client who's spending, $3-5 grand a month, right?
Yep,
So
absolutely.
I am a big believer in centralizing budgets, regardless of that scale. Of course, you don't always have control over what that looks like, depending on the clients you're working with. But the idea is we're all trying to make money ourselves, and by virtue of making money for our clients, right? So
Mhm.
if we're running from one marketing playbook and what our end goal is, whatever that might be for our clients, it makes sense to use that playbook as your guardrail to centralize that budget. And as things change, right now I'm watching companies spend tens of thousands of dollars a month going all in on AIO, GEO, whatever we're going to call it. I don't really care what we call it.
Let's just call it EIEIO and just be done
Yeah,
with it, please.
exactly. We'll have a song for it and everything. And so it's like we're going to shift these
Yep.
budgets around regardless of where that end goal is. But starting from a central bucket, we can then month to month, quarter to quarter, change up what we're doing as things are shifting, which we see daily now with AI and what we're doing. It's hard to keep
Yep.
up. It's hard to pivot those strategies as well. So if you are working from one bucket, it makes sense to start there and then pivot as you need to.
Very good. I appreciate that thought. Barry, thoughts on the matter?
No, I mean, I agree with it all. The question is like, are the AI results going to be, the last, like the end purchase, the bottom of the funnel, and I think they're trying with the agentic experiences where we could buy it from you and so forth. And I think they're all rushing to that to see how people adapt to that. So it will be interesting. But yeah, I agree with her. I said here, no, I'm not going to argue. I did enough of that earlier.
But folks, we're still talking about 0.2% of traffic coming to these sites, right? Now, at the same time, is AI and AIO and all the different experiences blocking consumers from interacting with the websites? Yeah, we're seeing that, but at the same time, isn't the traffic that we're getting more valuable than some of that loose top of the funnel query, right? Yeah, possibly.
Yeah,
No,
I think
the AI companies want you to think that, like, we're sending you the most valuable stuff. I don't know. I saw some guy post on LinkedIn who's from I forgot what it was. He's like, yeah, well, some people have conversion rates of like 1%. We've seen as high as like 70% conversion rates. I'm like, come on. Like, I don't know.
On 3 visits from your ChatGPT referral
Yeah.
source. Yeah, no problem there. All right, so one more question here, and I'll want to pivot over to a couple questions in the audience. Should teams invest more in human written content, and where can AI responsibly accelerate creation? So we're talking about budgets. Got to ask, where does AI creation come in for both the website and socials without hurting selection, credibility, or brand voice? Grace, I'll throw it to you again.
I think It's like most things, you get what you pay for. You know, AI content is cheaper, but it's also not as good.
I don't know.
Generally
Have you seen
speaking.
some of Barry's videos here recently? They're incredible. Anyway, keep on
Present
going.
company aside. So, yeah, but Melissa actually did a really awesome talk in the Women in Tech SEO conference a couple
Mhm.
months back about, how to basically use AI to write good content. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like just putting in like a few sentence prompts, write this
Right.
content, boom, AI slop.
Right.
So however you use AI, it definitely needs to have a human reviewer or editor, for example. But I also think that, it should again, AI is like, it generates content, but it doesn't yet have original thought. And that's what's missing. With humans, that's the advantage and the value you get from human writers. So that, yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll leave it at that.
Melissa, any thoughts about the balance of human written content in production compared to AI acceleration? As we're talking about investments, if we were still investing that $10,000, should we be going all in on human given the environment they're in?
It's a balance. And as Grace said, I spoke in Philadelphia a couple months ago talking about this balance of where do humans come in? How much do we trust AI with what we're doing? I've made it no secret that part of my primary job at Ricky DeRue is to find ways to leverage AI to improve efficiency on content, but not content that sucks, because I would rather quit my career and just walk away right now if that's what we were trying to do. And as Grace said, there's so much AI slop that's being put out there. Go on LinkedIn and look at someone's, who knows what SEMrush screenshot it is, talking about how they posted 100 pages in a month and that graph is going up, and you have no idea if that's true or false because nobody wants to actually share real data, because if they did, you'd see how much they actually suck at what they're doing versus what the guy is doing. And so for me, it's a balance, and that balance is going to look different depending on the niche and the subject matter. I've worked with clients in the home services industries where, there's nothing new about plumbing. AI can figure out how to write about plumbing. There's no problems there. But then I've worked in the health and medical fields and worked with companies trying to figure out how to improve efficiency in content creation in niches that have so much regulation, who need credentialed reviewers to go through point by point to make sure that they're not only not misinforming their audience, but getting themselves in trouble with governmental agencies. So really finding that balance. I am a firm believer that at some point here, AI will replace human writers. It's not today, it's not tomorrow, but at some point, this is going to be one of the quickest fields in our industry, just kind of like what we're seeing with web development as well, that is going to start going under. And for me, as a content strategist at heart and a writer at heart, my job is to figure out, how do I not lose my job and my team's job by merging these two things? And so I do think it's something that every company needs to look at, because the reality is, whether you're hiring an agency, a freelancer, or whatever, if they're not using AI to try to figure some of these things out, they are behind. And if they can figure out what works and what doesn't, you may be putting up more money up front to figure those things out, but you're going to save more money down the line and not run into as many problems with just putting out AI slop.
No AI slop. I mean, let's have it as bumper stickers, right?
Yeah, gonna get that.
Barry, thoughts on tattoo across it. Barry, thoughts about human content, investing in human content, and any investment on AI tools to accelerate publishing and content creation.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
it's the same thing everybody's saying. The only difference is that I'm looking forward to losing my job from AI. So that's the only difference. I mean, like you said, it's going to get better and better and better, and eventually it will replace everything and everybody. So we're all doomed. The question is, how soon?
Fantastic. With that perspective, I'm going to pivot over to a couple questions here from our audience here before we sign off. Where do you see the biggest hidden costs things teams will underfund now, but regret in 12 months? Grace, I'll toss it to you again because that's the
Oh my
evidently the pattern
gosh.
I'm going.
Yeah, that's a really great question.
Absolutely.
I think like from my own experience is like data, like reporting, measurement, data, like everything.
Mhm.
I do think that, you know, as we know, data is really important to make, good decisions on everything, especially like search. I know that now our data may not be the most, accurate, trustworthy, especially like AI search data.
Right.
But it's still important. And I do see that teams, aren't necessarily properly trained, or they don't have the right tools to access that data. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with that answer.
Data and reporting. What's going to be underinvested that people are going to regret? Teams are going to regret in 12 months. Melissa.
Without stealing Grace's thunder, I do agree in data and reporting. What metrics we're using for success is changing, whether we want it to or not. And
Sure.
understanding how that's changing now, just like how search intent is changing, is going to be critical to be able to prove budget allocations, getting more budget, keeping your job, frankly, with your clients. And so I do think that is going to be something underfunded. And frankly, that's something that's underfunded for most companies in general. This isn't new just because AI is rolling out and taking market share from channels. But beyond that, I'm going to harp again on, it's going to be content. This is another corner that most companies have always cut on, regardless of using AI or not. They're just finding another way to do it. And so I think that this potentially could be the time that actually matters the most, to not cut those corners and ensure that you're creating good, solid content, whether you're trying to use AI to do it or you're still 100% invested in your human writers.
Yeah, I'm going to agree.
Right.
I mean, the data thing, like I was going to say, it's not new. It's one of the most underfunded things for, centuries now. And it's mostly the bigger companies are doing it. The really big companies are doing it. Some of those big companies don't know what to do with it and so forth. The small players are not doing anything with their data or even storing them, which is hard. But in general, I'm going to go with those that are like, basically saying, I am not going to use AI. I mean, the people are like saying, I'm not using it, period. I don't care how much you hate AI or, it's going to take over everything you do and probably kill you in the future. You still need to spend money, use it, try it out, try it in specific situations where you think it might help you or think it might hurt you. Spend some of your money and time on that, on using the AI that you hate so much so that you can be friends with your enemy and be able to like see where everything's going in the future.
Are people saying that?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Are people not using AI?
Yes.
People are not using it.
Okay.
They refuse.
Yeah. I work with writers who are absolutely against using it in any way, shape, or form. And I spend a good deal of my time working with people on just the educational component of why AI matters, why the good, bad, and ugly, the evil aspects of it. Yeah, no, there are still a lot of people out there who are incredibly skeptical of trying to figure out how to use it, not just for work, but just using it in general to see how it integrates into how they're already searching and how they have been searching for over a decade. Yeah, it's wild how many people I still run into this way.
We got to be friends with Skynet while we still have time, right?
Yes. Remember your pleases and thank yous.
Absolutely. I do think I regret that teams will have 12 months from now, if they don't invest, is going to be video content. I think it's huge. Short form content is an area that I think teams should adopt and adapt to and be able to curate from that effort into all the different areas of channels that they can move that content into. So I think that would be a regret that they have. Last question from the audience here, if I can. How do you justify budget allocation when attribution models can't reliably tell you which search engine actually drove the conversion? I think we're talking about the same thing here, but can you even make budget allocations if you can't attribute? Well, yeah, we can, because there's visibility there. And either it's conversion attribution or not, you still have tools to be able to measure visibility, brand, and share of voice, like you're talking about, Grace, in these different platforms. So you have to change your KPIs to adapt to where we are now. Melissa, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. We're not just seeing a shift in how people are searching and what that looks like, but it's also how we're reporting, how we're setting KPIs. There are so many old school KPIs that I can't tell you how many clients I work with that come in and it's the same set. It's almost like night and day, boom, boom, boom. Here you go, same set. And so this is another mindset that we have to change and educate our clients on, because again, if we're as the experts having trouble attributing, right? Why on earth would our clients understand any of that either? So this goes back to I'm huge on education, especially right now in this kind of era we're in. And I think, helping your clients, it's not always our jobs to necessarily define and set the KPIs that they want to track internally, but I think working with them and helping them understand what AI visibility looks like, what tools out there can and can't do, and what they can show, and measuring that differently than we have before, and then encouraging our clients to look at it that way is the way to go.
Absolutely. Grace, I'll give you a swing at it.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I think teachers make the best SEOs. Like, if you're a teacher and you want to switch careers, look into SEO, because we're teaching people all the time, and the material is always changing. So
Amen to that.
yeah, 100%. I do, in terms of attribution, again, I don't think this is a new problem. Like, I remember when, it was really hard to attribute paid versus organic attribution sometimes.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
let alone the multi-touch point, and first touch and last touch attribution, or
exactly.
now in GA4 we're having later touch conversion points, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's not new.
100%. Yeah, it's just a same problem, different day, I guess. Different era. Yeah.
It's tough to put attribution against the billboard sign on the highway, right?
Yep.
Well, let's kind of look at it this way. Barry, I'll give you the final word on doom and gloom for 2026.
Is that a new question, or should I answer the other question?
Answer the other question first.
I was going to say have AI figure it all out, just whatever. I mean, how do I do this? And just tell your client. I don't know. I don't really deal with budgets, though. It's not my problem. So, and then the doom and gloom on 2026. It's just going to get worse. Honestly, it's going to get worse and worse and worse over this year. It will get better eventually, but I think it was hard at the end of this year. It's going to get a lot worse. So have a great 2026.
I'm going to debate you. I'm going to disagree. It's going to be fantastic, and
we're
all going to come up
horrible. We're done.
All right, folks, thanks so much for your time and participation of this semi-debate, semi-panel discussion. I really do appreciate everybody's time and investment. And we'll look forward to hearing from budget allocations in 2026. All right. We'll wrap up here. I want to make sure that you follow SE Ranking on their social channels over LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and X/Twitter, because I'm going to keep on saying that because I hated the brand change. Along with that, hey, we want to make sure that you watch the show, share this show as well with friends and family. Well, maybe not family because they just won't get it, but share with your colleagues, and any of the presentations that we've gone through today. Make sure that you've got a link to that. You can always share the YouTube channel to that particular presentation as well. So from all of us over at Edge of the Web, as well as SE Ranking, we appreciate everybody's attention and listening through the last 3.5 hours here. Make sure that you go into 2026 with lots of great thoughts on strategy as well as attribution, and do not be as piece of cyber driftwood as we sign off here over at Edge of the Web all the time. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.